For Wednesday, June 18th, may I have roll call, please?
Mayor Allen,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Clayton,
Present.
Commissioner Taylor, Commissioner Crowley,
Present.
and Commissioner Skidmore.
Present.
I'd like to welcome everyone here in the audience, as well as anybody watching or listening at home. We will begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation by Pastor Timothy Roth with Faith Lutheran Church.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Almighty God, you have given governing authorities as stewards over our life together to help organize and order our civil affairs. Be with these, our leaders, as they deliberate, as they discuss the things for the benefit of the people of Ottawa and the surrounding areas as they are impacted by the decisions as well. Keep them in your integrity, being directed by your truth. It is in your almighty name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. We will begin with public comments. Do we have any registered?
We have none registered.
Okay. We will go to item 7, which is appointments, proclamations, recognitions, nominations, and public hearings. We will start with 7A, which is the Juneteenth Proclamation, recognizing the effort to make Ottawa an inclusive community and honor the true meaning of the holiday. Richard Jackson will accept the proclamation, which will be read by Commissioner Skidmore.
It's in. Whereas Juneteenth is the longest running African-American holiday, whereas it recognized June 19th, 1865 as the date the news of slavery and reached an enslaved people in Galveston, Texas. And whereas the Emancipation Proclamation that freed enslaved people living in the Confederacy took effect January 1, 1863, and was the ratification of the 13th Amendment. And whereas Juneteenth began primarily as a church celebration in 1866 and spread throughout the Black communities, particularly in the South. And whereas between 1854 and 1861, people living in Kansas could decide if the state would allow slavery or the principle known as popular sovereignty. And whereas Kansas became known as the Bleeding Kansas because of the violence carried out by both sides, anti-slavery and pro-slavery supporters. And whereas Kansas had a reputation as a land of freedom and attracted a diverse group of people, not everyone enjoyed the same benefits. And whereas Kansas did not have the Jim Crow laws early in Kansas history, as time passed though, segregation became more common. And whereas the federal landmark ruling Brown versus Topeka Board of Education in 1954 allowed states to operate separate but equal schools. And whereas in 1881, Tinnen versus Ottawa was a prelude to Brown's similar ruling, only regarding schools in Franklin County. And whereas the Ottawa swimming pool was segregated well into the 1960s, and Ottawa was dealt with the residue of segregation. And whereas Ottawa has worked to make this an inclusive community, let's use this Juneteenth holiday as an opportunity to honor the true meaning of the holiday and what it represents, and continue to work toward the promise of equality for all. Therefore, we, the governing body of the city of Ottawa, Kansas, do hereby proclaim June 19, 2025 to be recognized as Juneteenth, signed by our Mayor, Emily Allen.
Richard, we'll get a picture, and then if you have any words to say, we'll go from the I mean, honestly, no.
Give it a mic, yeah. He looks like. He's well, much more well trained. Yeah. So we're not here.
You're welcome to say a few words if you would like.
Yeah, well, I want to go over here. I want to thank the city commission for the Juneteenth proclamation. Been willing to do this each and every year. I think the proclamation speaks for itself. What it's in here is to tell people we all came over on somebody's boat. Sometimes we need to remember that. And those that don't know their history, repeat their history. In this day and age, people are trying to repeat history backwards. We're not moving we're not moving forward. So I think there's a part for each and every one of us to play as we move forward in this community, as we move forward in this country, is doing the right thing. We want to quote the Bible, we're supposed to love thy neighbor. That means each and every one of us. Doesn't mean the person across the street from you. It means each and every one of you. In here, they had Opal Lee, 97-year-old lady from Marshall, Texas. And she led the movement to get the Juneteenth holiday sign. Took about 2.5 years, give or take. For that, the news to reach Galveston, Texas, that the slaves had been free. Sometimes that's just how slow Congress moves. City Commission doesn't move that, so they're much quicker than that, so give me credit for that. But she took that on as a project of making this a holiday. And she started out one day after church, having the mayor, school board members, and some other friends walk 2.5 miles, representing about 2.5 years it took the news to get to Galveston. Went to bed, the next day she did 2.5 miles. And so that became the rallying cry. So she was invited to places 2.5 miles, was about 15, whatever, 2 point something rather to Washington. She didn't walk all that way to Washington, figured about 100. She tried to get the holiday done when Obama was president. That didn't work out. She started a petition drive, hoping that she could get 100,000 signatures on a petition. She ended up at 2.7 million. And of course, in 21, it was signed into law, and so now it's a holiday. Some are celebrating it now, others aren't. Some because the changes in Washington with diversity and that sort of stuff, and some don't want to get caught up into that thing that I'm gonna lose money if I'm supportive of anything that has anything to do with diversity, but it's still a holiday, still celebrated here. Mind the commission and the county, two entities, you're not listed as a king holiday. Schools not in, otherwise it would be a holiday, so got them, but those that celebrate it, it's more than just a holiday. Use it as an opportunity to do something good. Just don't take the day off and treat it as another day to kick back and do nothing. So struggles are never easy, but you got a lady who's been 97 years old. She can get out and pound the pavement, do whatever needs to be done. Think of what we can do collectively. Thank you.
Thank you. Well said. We will next do a proclamation for small cities. This proclamation recognizes the National League of Cities designation of June as Small Cities Month, honoring municipalities under 50,000 in population and highlighting the essential role small communities like Ottawa play in America's success. This will be read by Mayor Pro Tem Clayton and accepted by Commissioner Skidmore.
The proclamation reads as follows. Whereas small cities and towns under 50,000 population are the home to millions of Americans and constitute the vast majority of municipalities across the United States. And whereas small cities and towns strive to strengthen their communities through the provision of services and programs to improve the quality of life for all citizens. And whereas the federal government is an essential partner in the success of small cities and towns and must be encouraged to continue to support programs and legislation that strengthens small communities. And whereas state governments are partners in the success of small cities and towns and must be encouraged to continue to support key programs and legislation that strengthen communities. And whereas organizations, businesses, and citizens are partners in the success of small cities and towns and must be encouraged to continue to grow their efforts to make small communities a viable choice for people to live in. And whereas during these challenging economic times, the need for a renewed intergovernmental partnership to support essential public services is more important than ever to ensure the safety and growth of small town America. And whereas the National League of Cities President and the Small Cities Council of the National League of Cities have declared June 2025 as Small Cities Month. Therefore, we, the governing body of the city of Ottawa, Kansas, do hereby proclaim the month of June 2025 as Small Cities Month in the city of Ottawa, Kansas, and encourage the President, Congress, state governments, organizations, businesses, and all citizens to recognize this event and to work together this month and through the year to invest in small cities and towns to better the lives of all citizens. Signed this 11th day of June 2025 by our Mayor, Emily Allen.
If we can.
Let's look at that next thing.
Does it say that?
Yes.
So it's a weekday.
Well, I'm serving for Sarah today. She's our longest serving commissioner, so she didn't accept this call. You're a stunt double today, I guess. But I guess 50,000 population and less, but we're a long ways away from that. But who knows, someday we may be there. But I hate following Richard. I appreciate all your comments. You've made some good comments there. I just heard something today about adversity, how same boiling water will soften carrots but harden eggs, and the adversity that we have, how that can make a difference on what's in the pot of hot water right now. And so I appreciate your comments along that line. So, but on behalf of the city of Ottawa, I accept this. Thank you.
Freeman, you can frame it.
Oh, yeah, we'll do Well done.
We will move on to the consent agenda, which includes minutes from June 11th, 2025 meeting, May 2025 finance monthly report, outside agency reports for April of 2025, and the agenda approval.
Mayor,
Yes.
I would request that item C3 be moved to the June 25th agenda. So, or I'm sorry, C2 be moved to the June 25th agenda. for
Okay.
further review.
So all of that minus C2.
Motion to approve.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. At this time, I'd like to give the commissioners a chance to declare any conflict or communication they've had that might influence their ability to consider today's issues impartially. Seeing none, we will move on to unfinished business. We'll start with item 10A, budget recap with Director Landis. This is a follow-up presentation and discussion addressing questions from utility funds portion of the 2026 budget presentations.
Thank you. This is something new that we are adding this year, which is after we get through each segment of the budget, so utility funds, special revenue funds, and then our mill levy funds, we want to do a recap, and really not to review any of the information that was already presented, but more to just make sure that all the questions that were asked were answered, and then also relayed back to the community who might be paying attention to those specific items. So really, this is just a report, and if you have questions, we're happy to answer. I believe that our department heads are all online today, simply for space in the room. And then some of the general information that was asked during those meetings was related to, well, just presentation of the budget materials. And so you'll start seeing some of those line items reflected in the budget narratives so that you can refer back to the line item budgets. Information related to debt management. There were several questions there. Or are there any penalties for prepayment on lease purchase debt? Are there benefits to paying off any existing debt ahead of time? And what is the city's debt ceiling? And do we anticipate that that will become an issue as we finance more projects over the next several years? And we are compiling that information. We'll bring that back to you on July 9th when we talk about the debt service fund, and we can have a more in-depth explanation of all of that for you in those packet materials then. Some of the other questions asked were related to bad debt and receivables for the utility fund. So this is a summarized, we talked about some of the numbers, and some of those numbers were in your budget memos, but this is a summary table for you. It's also included in the packet in case anyone's interested. You asked the question about how can we better collect on bad debt? And currently we use the state of Kansas set-off program, which we talked about, but I thought relevant to add here. And we're gonna bring back to you some other options for how better ways to be able to collect some of that debt, because as we noted and you noted, as we were reviewing each of those funds, it could beneficially impact the bottom line for some of those utilities. This was kind of a carry forward for this, specifically for the utility for water. There is a GO bond issue 2009A. The question was asked, and because it was part of the information presented, could we use the K-68 TIF dollars in that area to pay off some of that debt for that Northeast Water Tower? Because I think originally that was the intent. And then with the development not going through out there, then the question remains, can some of that be used? We will also review that with you when we review the debt service on July 9th. And then there was another question about the Cedar Street street improvements and the water line. And so just for clarity purposes, that water line will be placed on the west side. I believe it's the west side of the street. Yes, the west side of Cedar Street. That's from First to Seventh Street, and that's a 12-inch water line. Under the wastewater utility, there was a question about the difference between, I believe I understood this correctly, the way that the number of gallons that are produced and sold for water versus the number of gallons that come into the wastewater treatment plant. And the difference between those numbers are we sell water additionally to 3 wholesale customers and the city of Princeton. And then they have their own treatment options there, and that water does not come back to us to treat through our wastewater treatment plant facility. I think our initial conversation was the difference somewhere related to irrigation, and after we left the meeting, we thought, oh yeah, no, actually, this makes more sense because it's a significant amount of difference there. So that is related to our wholesale customers. The electric utility, this information was just additional. If that was the first week that we covered utilities, and for the second round for water and wastewater, we had given you the number of customers. This is just the breakdown of residential versus commercial. So approximately 5,450 residential customers and about 790 commercial customers in the electric utility. For the stormwater utility, there was a question about the 20-year stormwater master plan and how many of those projects have been completed. And we had listed in that agenda memo several of those projects that had already been completed, and I think the remaining question was what was left in there that still needs to be completed. There were several projects listed in the draft CIP document as future projects, but really, we need to go back and reevaluate, and that's a 20-year master plan. And so really by 27, we would have been reevaluating anyway. So when that study is completed on the levy, then once we know exactly what we can do with that levy, how and when that's going to get done, we can go back and reevaluate that original master plan and update that so that we have a future listing of all projects related to the stormwater utility. There's really no legal or financial considerations with this presentation. It was just an update for some of the information you would ask for. Again, it's all included in the packet, and if you have more questions, we're happy to answer or bring it back at another time.
I think that's great information, and one of my questions today was going to be, how do we follow up with questions? If, we're sitting at home recapping of what we've heard, how we go about asking those. So yeah, if this is a regular thing on the agenda that we can count on the next week to ask any follow-up questions as we ponder, through the things, that is fantastic, and I much appreciate it.
Yes.
Do we have any questions regarding?
I just don't believe that 2007 was almost 20 years ago. I think that's wrong.
Check your math.
Yeah,
Mhm.
thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions? Yeah, you covered it.
Okay.
Thank
perfect.
you.
Thank you.
We will start, or move on to new business. We'll start with item 11A.
Resolution adopting development plan and creation of district and setting hearing on development plan and district Northeast Village RHID.
This resolution would call a public hearing for July 23rd, 2025 at 4 p.m. to consider the adoption of an RHID for the Northeast Village Housing Project. We have Director Landis and Rick McConnell here to present on this.
Thank you. Rick is online to answer any questions that you might have. And also we have the developer representative, Doug Bohai, here with us also if you have questions about the project specifically. The recommendation for this is that you consider a resolution that determines considering establishing the RHID district, creating that district, approving a development plan and setting the date for and then holding a public hearing. So you're not in this action approving anything other than saying that you intend to move forward with setting the public hearing date and then holding that public hearing. The project background is that this application was received for 1426 East Wilson Street. It's at the corner of Davis and Wilson. And that on April 23rd, you approved a resolution that established boundaries for the proposed district. And then that resolution was submitted to the state for consideration, and we received that confirmation back from the Department of Commerce on May 1st. And so this next step being brought to you was we completed the feasibility study, which you'll see a draft attached to the development plan in the packet. The development plan is a draft development plan in case there was any changes that might need to happen between now and then. It's not complete. And then you will also see a development agreement coming to you at the next time that you see this item. The project description itself is for a reinvestment housing incentive district, which we have used. You have approved one other RHID, and an RHID can be used for any housing development that is where they have cost that is for the extension of utilities, vertical construction if utilities have been in place for more than 10 years, or to improve upon upstairs housing in your downtown district. The project that's being brought to you here, it's titled Northeast Village, and it is 40 single-family townhomes. It's proposed as 2-bedroom, 2-bath rental homes. Originally, the proposed market rent is $1,250, and then the subsection of rental homes that was in our 2025 housing study, which you just recently reviewed with our FCDC director not too long ago. This section of housing does fall within one of those areas that was needed within the community. The project history, this is more of a recap of the planning stages. So the concept was brought in 2023, and in November, you rezoned this property to R2 and from commercial, restricted commercial district. And then the final plat was approved in March of 2024. This is kind of a highlight of the timeline for the incentive proceedings. And so again, we kind of discussed already what you've already approved. The step today is highlighted in purple, and that is just considering setting a plan. And then the remaining action items are what would happen after you hold the public hearing before final approval. There is a veto period at the end of this process. It's not for all incentive processes, but in this one, there's a 30-day protest period where the county and the school district could protest this incentive.
Does that protest period start then on this timeline?
It would start after we have approved. It'd be 30 days from the time that we approve the development plan and development agreement. So that's going to be brought to you on July 23rd.
Okay.
So essentially August 23rd would be the end of the 30-day protest period. A side note on that item is we meet when we have any incentive application, we meet with the county and the school district far in advance of bringing you any information. So hopefully that helps to answer any questions that they have so that those protest periods become a lot less intense. And they're not available for every incentive, but in this case it is. The just some of the development plan items that are included in the packet for you. The property ownership is Richmond Circle Partnership. The proposed development is at 1426 East Wilson Street. The current assessed valuation is $24,660. As a reminder, this is an incremental reimbursement over time. So the value above the $24,660 is what would be reimbursed back to the developer over a period of time once approved. And you will continue to get the $24,660 as the base assessed value going forward. The housing facilities is the 40 townhomes, 2-bedroom and 2-bath units, comprise the outline of how this will be situated within that parcel is that there's 3 4-plex units, 3 5-plex units, 1 6-plex, and 1 7-plex unit. The public infrastructure improvements that they have costs that are eligible for the project include water, sanitary sewer, electric, sidewalks, and stormwater. And we did have a financial feasibility study completed by Ellers, which is required. The information that's provided in the feasibility study and confirmation of the eligible cost related to the infrastructure support the recommended and negotiated maximum reimbursement of $845,000. That's been accepted or negotiated and accepted by the developer, but we have not brought that number to you yet. That will come as part of the development agreement and development plan that comes after the public hearing is set. But we wanted to give you a heads up that we had been working towards that direction. Those dates are set for July 23rd, and the proposed resolution was prepared by Kutak Rock, as well as reviewed by your city attorney. If you have questions for Kutak, they are online. Rick McConnell is our transition partner that's been working with us, and he's happy to answer any questions, as well as Mr. Bohai, who can answer questions about the project if you have.
Do you have any questions?
Well, Rick, this is Mike Skidmore, just say welcome to our city commission and being our advisor in this area. So congratulations on your, I hope it's a promotion.
It's a transition, I guess. That's
That's
my
good.
official title. So I'm a transition partner, but I've been doing this kind of work for about 25 years at other law firms and in Missouri and Kansas both. So, but it's a real pleasure to work with you all and with Director Landis and the staff. Just an excellent group. And I think this is a good incentive for communities who need housing. And so we'll sort of delve into it a little more at the public hearing, but I do appreciate the welcome and look forward to working with you.
Well, that's what I had two questions. One, you already answered how many years experience. It sounds like you're well seasoned in this area. My second question is, did you see anything in all this that looked unusual to you, or did it all pretty much standard language and standard recommendations?
No, and I appreciate that. That was the only other point I thought I might make is this is a tool that we're seeing all over the state used very frequently. And so certainly the city's used it before, but other communities are using it as well. And I think there's always some comfort you can take with, not being on the forefront of every single thing that happens. You're very much with the majority of communities in Kansas that are considering this and using it. It's in a lot of respects, it's a relatively easy thing to implement. There are procedural steps, and the public hearing is very important. Notice of that is published and mailed. So there are no secrets here. We're gonna do it all in a very public manner. And I think this is a very typical approach. And the discussions with the developer have been very productive and not unpleasant in any way. So I think we feel good about where we are right now.
Good. Yeah, I'm glad we're not the first one through the wall. That first person through the wall always gets bloody, and we don't want to do that.
Yeah, your head hurts after that. That's right.
You're right. I appreciate that. Yeah, we've had our housing study. Paul Bean's here, I see, and he presented that to us, and it showed that we needed, I think, 130 rental units or something like that in the next 5 years, and even more housing. But this is certainly a good start in that direction. So we feel very confident something what we got here looks good. Thank you for being here and explaining it to us.
Thank you.
And Director Landis and Rick, you may have an answer to this as well. If something were to change in this project, if it goes through, everything's great. We had kind of saw, I think it was 3 4-plexes, 3 5s. If something were to happen and the scope changes and it shrinks, essentially, since their valuation would not be the same amount, if they say only did 20 units for whatever reason may occur over the next 1.5 years or 2 years as they're building, that would essentially then just decrease their valuation, which would decrease the amount that they'd be eligible for to meet that 845 or correct?
Yes, so they're only eligible to receive back the amount of eligible costs that have been certified. So you would assume that the project cost itself would be lower than, of course, what they would have anticipated early on. And then also what the value of those built units, once they go onto the tax roll, that increment created by those each year. So even if they didn't, whether they built partial or whether it took longer than they anticipated, that's all part of the planning process for them. So you would be the limiting scope of that is that it's only up to a maximum amount. and or limited to a certain number of years. And so anything, that's why it's really, really important that they know what their plan is up front and what they plan to accomplish with those dollars.
Thank you. This was either dollars or date, whatever comes first on that, right? So
Yes.
it's like a CID, I guess.
It's like a TIF. It's really just a residential version of a TIF district.
Okay, I think CID, because they have sales tax at a limitation, $200.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
And the way that we've structured our approach to this is that while the RHID statute gives you 25 years, we brought to you when we first started when we did our first RHID, recently, we brought to you the concept of limiting that to pair it to something more similar to our NRP program and the length of time for that. And so while it may not be exactly 10 years, it might be 12 or 13 years, by the time you build and they come onto the tax roll and there's actually a value that can be reimbursed. So then we use the words 10 actual years of reimbursement or up to a maximum dollar amount. And so you'll see that it's not, that's how we've structured those deals.
Any other questions? How would we like to proceed?
I'll make the motion, we approve item 11A.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
And this is just approving the hearing.
Yes.
May I have roll call vote, please?
How do you vote, Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor is absent. Commissioner Crowley,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Clayton,
Yes.
and Mayor Allen.
And I vote yes, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will move on to 11B.
Review of 2026 operating budget for community partners.
This will be a presentation and discussion of funding requests submitted by community partners with an opportunity for the governing body to ask questions and provide consensus on allocations for the 2026 budget. We have Director Landis and I think Director Welsh. It says Director Welsh.
That's an error. I
Okay. It's
apologize.
Director Landis.
Yes, he was concerned when he saw that.
That's interesting.
It's
Okay.
new.
Here we are.
Well, what I thought I would do is, first of all, thank you for all of our community partners being here that have applied. And I want to give them an opportunity to be available to you to ask questions of them. But wanted to give you just a quick overview of how this fund, the fund that supports these partner requests works. And so really, this is just a review and discuss, and we're recommending that we then carry this over, and this would be an additional item on your next meeting agenda so that you could then further discuss and then maybe make some recommendations or ask for more or different information at that time. Largely so you can spend more of your time engaging with them as opposed to trying to make a decision today. The purpose of the Community Service Fund is to make sure that we have available dollars for some of those services that are needed throughout the community. And you hear year after year, the needs based on those applications and what their asks are. The revenue that's generated for this fund there is no revenue source. It's a transfer from the water fund, the wastewater fund, the electric fund, and the general fund. So the revenue is highly dependent upon what you determine those needs are and how much you want to contribute towards those partners. And then those transfers from each of those funds are directly impacted, and we'll adjust each of those funds accordingly to make those transfers into this fund to accommodate for that.
Question on that. Do we ever see, and I'm sure it depends on exactly which community partner maybe, or do we ever see TGT funds assisting in this? In these asks?
I think that it could,
Okay.
yes, and I think we have not worked that into our forecast yet. In fact, we didn't even
Yeah.
bring to you a forecast at this time because we wanted to prepare some of those estimates and knowing, maybe have a little better feel of where we would be towards the end of this year, being able to accomplish some of those needs at the top of next year. And I think that can be part of our conversation, maybe even next week,
Okay.
and how we would want to, what the impact might be and how we could accomplish that.
Yeah.
If that's fair.
That's what I was hoping, if we had any numbers by next week and kind of were able to figure those in as well, that would be greatly
Yeah,
appreciated.
we can run some scenarios
Yeah.
and then have a little
Yes.
more in-depth.
When do we start
conversation.
collecting?
September?
August 1, I believe, is the first collection date, yes.
Thank you.
So this table is a summary of everything that was requested. The highlighted column is 2026 request. The columns to the left are everything that was awarded or requested in prior years. The difference column on the very right is the difference between 2026 request and what was awarded in 2025. The top portion of this table are your returning partners that have received dollars in the past. The bottom section of this table are new requests that have come in for this year. All of their applications were included in your packet. It was incredibly long, I know, but I hope that you had a good opportunity to go through at least some of those so that you can ask questions of them. And then, if you have further questions, I'm sure they'll be able to follow up and answer some of those even later if you need that. The way we structured this is we just listed them out. We thought we would just do a summary slide for each one of them and have them available for any questions that you have. Our very first one, sorry, Vanessa, to do this to you, but so Prairie Paws is the first on the list. The 2026 request is for $63,430. That is $1,030 more than last year. And the funding request is for rising operational costs as we pulled from the application. And so you have Vanessa available for any questions you have.
You want me to say anything or just?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Come
And-
on up.
Yes.
I have some stats. I love a stat. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for allowing us the opportunity to, go through this process. We have been analyzing statewide what cities are paying for these types of costs. So I think that's actually a fairer way to assess a fee to our municipal partners than to say, it costs $2 million a year to run Prairie Paws, and we feel like you should pay 20% of that. That seems really arbitrary to us. So we went through, we had a legal intern go through all the municipalities that they could find, FOIA request budgets, see what they're paying, and then break it down to a per capita number. And so this increase represents Ottawa paying the consistent amount that other municipalities of this size pay for this service, which is $5 per capita. So that's why it's a very tiny increase, is just kind of reflecting that. Obviously, if it doesn't get approved, we will be just fine. But this is just kind of a mechanism for us to get all of our municipal partners paying a consistent fee that the rest of the municipalities of this size pay. If you have a population less than Ottawa, so Chanute, for example, is paying over $20 per capita. They're paying more than 4 times what Ottawa is paying and what cities of this size are paying. So there is higher costs associated with being a lower population. We know that with our small cities in Franklin County, they struggle to afford some of the public services. So this fee reflects cities of this size and the per capita fee that those cities are paying. And so that's where it came from. The rising operational costs, one of the things in our agreement that we are required to do is get an audit. The estimated fee for that audit now is over $25,000. And so when we receive $62,000 from the city of Ottawa, you have to turn around and pay $20,000 of that to a CPA in order to audit our finances. So the cost of that has increased significantly. Not because our organization has increased, just the cost of that service. I know a lot of people are saying that auditing is more expensive than it used to be. So that's kind of the background on that.
They're not happy about that.
Are they making it better or worse?
Since you're kind of going to like a per capita model,
Mhm.
is your kind of thought to essentially like as census data has dropped, kind of reflect that? So, or kind of what are you gauging population from? Would that be a plan, with 2028, a new census comes out, kind of look at that value and adjust accordingly?
Yes, but if the city did reach 50,000, like you mentioned before, the per capita cost would actually go down at that point. Because it becomes more efficient to serve populations of that size. So it's not that it would continue to grow, it would grow as the population stayed around this size. And then once it would heat, kind of like that economy of scale size, it would actually plateau. And then if it continued to grow, it would fall down again. So it's just a different way of assessing it. Yeah.
And then last year, I know your request was a lot higher. And if I remember correctly, it was kind of specifically related to, kind of you housing an animal control officer, a vehicle, kind of you encompassing all of that into one thing.
Mhm.
Kind of on that, I know we had tabled it last year because, kind of total fund requests and the money we had
you know, right now for animal control, are you guys still looking at potentially trying to get that? Sharing that with the police department, kind of like that model going forward? I know even recently in this whole last year, there have been several cases of issues with animals at large, dogs off leash, those types of things that, either you or between you and the police department, I don't know, where there may be bandwidth to potentially look at something for that. And so I just wanted to kind of touch base on your request from last year versus this year. with not
Yeah.
having that.
We're still definitely open to it, and the studies that we were looking at, it is cheaper for a private organization to deliver that program than it is through law enforcement. But you know, and maybe it's a joint partnership, like last year's model was really getting funding from different angles because no one entity could really afford to do it. And then us being the middleman for delivering that program. I do still think there's a need. I think our organization is still very much open to partnering in a way to solve that problem. Just what does the city want? What do the citizens want? And where's the money gonna come from? But we're definitely open to helping solve that issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we have some other animal stuff coming down the pipe, so we can kind of roll all that together in a discussion with chief as well and kind of everything to see
Yeah.
how that could potentially serve residents, because I think there definitely is a need for something regarding animals, dogs loose, leash laws, those types of things, because I think we're seeing at least I'm hearing of an increase in activity in that.
Yeah.
You know, you guys may hear a lot more than we do, but I think we're
Yeah,
starting to hear more.
it's a pretty frequent complaint that I'm hearing, you know, and like we talk about the economy of scale of different population sizes. Not every city has an animal control officer, not, you know, but there's always that point to where it's like it's needed and yet there's not the tax base, and this is just another one of those examples of things that are hard to fund at a low population size. And so, you know, I hope the citizens understand that it's not just the city overlooking this issue. It's just a very difficult problem to solve for a city of this size. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. It is kind of, I feel like we're on the tipping point for sure for needing that position.
Yeah, Emporia is a great example. They're a little bit bigger than us. They have 2 full-time animal control officers, but they're more in the 20,000 population size and bigger tax base and things like that. So, yeah, we
Are
are,
they both full-time?
they're both full-time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's almost like you can't afford any and then you can afford 2.
Yeah.
You know, you don't need any and now you need 2. Yeah, so there's definitely a tough spot there.
Do you know for Emporias, are they, I guess, sworn officers with full law enforcement capabilities, I would guess you could say, as like true officers? Or are they more, I guess, civil, I guess, I don't know better.
Yeah, they're definitely more of like a civilian employee of the police department. So
Okay.
they're given limited authority under the city code to enforce certain ordinances. But they do have to then lean on a fully trained police officer for certain situations. You know, executing search warrants and things like that is outside their capacity. But you know, they're able to do 90% of their job, I think, without too much assistance from the police department. They issue citations and things.
Thank you.
I'll say your request is very humble. I mean, I would say, you know, it's half the rate of inflation and that we all face costs wherever we're going on inflation costs. And we know we don't want a city-owned, a city-run animal shelter. I just want to let the public know that the reason we do it this way is as a nonprofit, you're able to solicit grants and different fundraising opportunities, which we've been very successful at. So we have a good setup. I know it's a lot of money. People may think, look, what we're spending there for dogs and cats. But the alternative is much worse. We don't want that. So I just want to say congratulations on what you're doing and the fundraising you're doing and the grants you're even getting. So.
Thank you so much. And that $5 per capita for those other comparable sizes, that's after the city spent money to build a building. So, you know, we're lucky that in Ottawa and Franklin County, you know, at least we didn't have to put in millions of dollars to build that building. So if you're thinking of what those other municipalities are paying, that's after they invested heavily in that facility as well. So there's some good savings there.
Vanessa, are you required to do the audit because you're a nonprofit every year?
We're required with our agreement with the city of Ottawa. It's listed as a contractual obligation for us to satisfy our agreement with Ottawa.
So that's where it's hard. We give $60,000 and then require a $20,000 audit.
Yeah.
And how often the audit, you say? That's every year?
We are now doing it every year.
Every year.
Yeah.
Do we require that every year? Here?
I think it's either an audit or an independent
It's
review.
in the funding agreement, how the funding agreement can be that, but it's our funding agreement, so after you guys do that, we do a funding agreement with them annually, and it's one of their clauses in the funding agreement.
Okay, so it's, the audit's a lot more expensive than a financial review though, right?
Mhm.
What's a financial review?
It turned out to be not much cheaper. It was about 16,000. And then we were eligible for more grants for doing this. So we would want to audit as often
Yeah.
as we can anyway. So I don't think that if you took it out of the funding agreement, we would necessarily
Yeah.
stop doing it. Cause we would lose some other funding.
That
So,
makes sense.
yeah,
So it's not just the city requiring it.
Right,
There's other
yeah,
individuals,
yes.
okay.
Yeah.
For the benefit to,
yeah, there's a larger benefit than
Yeah.
just this agreement. Yeah,
For
it's
sure.
just an example of a cost that's gone up. Yeah.
And I'm assuming you've requested the same from the county for the increase?
We didn't request an increase from the county this year, no, we did last year. So we're trying to stagger these requests and gradually grow, our funding over time.
Any other questions for Vanessa? Okay, I think you've answered them for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next request is in support of the Veterans Day programming, and it's a continuation of the funding line. Annually, since at least our chart goes back to 2016, it's always been $1,000 request. And so, do we have anybody here? I don't believe anyone is here for that.
I know one thing I was gonna ask Derek if he was here. I know I saw that they had their trailer with their flags, all of that stolen. And kind of just check on if they got, I think it was found in Lawrence or something I saw on Facebook, so I don't know if they got those back. What that kind of is looking like, or where they're at in terms of this, because I think, you know, especially next year being the semi-quincentennial, thank you for pronouncing that, so now I can. You know, I love when you drive downtown and Main Street's
Yeah.
lined with the flags, city parks full. I definitely think next year will be a great year for that. So I would just, if you have any information on, I know they lost a bunch of stuff. I don't know if they had insurance or how
We'll follow up.
that's really
Yeah.
working on what they have. I would just be kind of interested in at least seeing that. And there may be an option to potentially help even a portion for getting some of that back if we necessarily need to.
We will certainly follow up on that.
Do we know that, $1,000, what they spend it on, was not just the parade, I assume, and then what the expenses would be in the parade?
So it says at the bottom, funds will be used to update and replace display flags that were stolen earlier this year.
Okay, I'm surprised they didn't need $1,000 for that though.
Well, I think there's more that they do than just that. I just think that's some of the funds.
Do we know, does any of this go towards, I know on towards Veterans Day, there's the members of armed forces, those flags on the utility poles and stuff. Does this go portion towards that? Is that the same group? Do we know who does that?
I don't
As well
know.
as kind of downtown flags? Okay,
We'll bring that back to you as well.
It's the Franklin County Honors is the same group that does the flags, but I don't think, their funding goes towards that. It's a partnership with the person buying the flag pays a portion of it. And then donations support the other half, of whatever the cost is for this flag.
okay, thank you.
The next request is for our city band, and their request is back down slightly from last year, which is the $4,915. I think if you recall last year, they had requested a small additional amount for just the 1 year. And we have Mr. Morty and
Mr. Paquette.
thank you.
You guys might be our favorite of the day because you're going backward.
Yeah.
Well,
Forward.
Any question that you have? Basically, we're just asking for $100 extra for music, because we're trying to always buy additional music, have not repeat the same numbers all the time.
And you guys are moving inside this year. Is that all, every concert's inside at OMA?
yeah, and the reason that we kind of came to that decision is it's been hard to get a road crew to load stuff to move, and
we have the facility to use, and so far, I think last year, I think we had 2 concerts outside due to weather and everything else. It was just made, we're just trying it this year to see how it works, and so far, our numbers have been pretty good. Probably not what they would be if they were outside, but we also, we have to borrow a trailer from from the school district. It's not even ours. And, I use my own vehicle to tow it. That's really not an issue, but we just don't have. The facility is there, and it's just much easier for us just to use that facility and share it with the other groups that are there. So, and then part of the other thing is that a lot of our audience and some of our band members are getting on in age, and sometimes weather, like hot weather, can be very, kind of detrimental to what's going on. But that was one of the big reasons that I end up having to do, and again, it's part of what I do, but I end up having to do a lot of the loading and unloading and stuff since we don't have that. And, I just feel bad having to ask the district to use their equipment, which we shouldn't really have to be doing, but I don't know that we have an option with the city other than, we've got pickup trucks, but I don't know that we have a box truck to deliver stuff to where we needed to go. And so
It would take extra from the city to help us do that then, not just the trailer, but the help, the manpower. I serve as the chair of the board and then to take care of the finances. But I tried offering the young people in the band more money and they still didn't want to do that.
So that was just part of the reason that we decided to move in. So, and we may change again next year. It just seems like we'd be about the same place we were. I think we'd only have been able to do 1 concert outside so far this year. So
There was rain yesterday.
Yeah. Part of it is convenience, and the other part of it is just the technical side of it is we can't get people to be on the load crew, and it just makes the job just a little bit more difficult. So
Do you feel like attendance is the same or between outside versus inside?
I'll say it's probably a little less that we're inside. But now I say that, and we do keep track of numbers.
About
So-
140 last week and then 118
Yeah.
yesterday.
So I'd say it's pretty close to what we do outside. So, but I know that people do enjoy being outside, and I don't argue that
Yeah.
point. But again, the other side of it is that that's not what people see. They just see the performance. They don't see all the other stuff that goes into doing it. So, but again, music is something that is it goes up just because that publishing and everything else is just one of those things. So
For sure.
it's not a lot, but it does help out. So.
And did I see that you were doing most of them inside, but you have a couple outside, or was
We
it-
did last year.
Oh, okay.
Last year.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess when I first started this job, it was to the point where we didn't have access to the OMA.
Sure.
And so we would just have to cancel a concert, and some days that would be, we're making that decision at
Right
5 o'clock.
before.
Yeah.
So then it got offered to us to use the facility, so we didn't have to cancel any concerts. But last year, due to weather and everything else, we only had 2 concerts outside. So we just decided to try it inside this year to see so I guess we really need to compare what our numbers would be previous years to what this year, but I'm just gonna say from just an outside point, I'd say it's pretty close.
I
So,
think our highest number last year, we can ask Becky if she kept track of that. I think our highest number came towards the end of July.
what was our last concert?
160 or something when we were outside. In the past, it's usually been in July, at around 160. But I don't feel that our numbers are down that much
Yeah.
right now.
Well, I know being outside has a rich tradition to it, and people maybe walking by hadn't planned on coming,
Mhm.
listen, so you kind of get numbers that way,
Yeah.
I can see that. At the same time, for the participants and for not only participants, but also for the audience, being air conditioned concert, that make a difference to us, but.
It does help.
When you guys are at the OMA, is the OMA like concessions open, or is it,
Mhm.
okay?
Yeah, it's just like they're open
Yeah,
for
just like,
business,
okay.
and so that does help contribute to the use of that facility. So,
Tiffany decided to keep concessions in.
Yeah, so we do use that, and then I do any necessary, like this week, they have a theater thing going on, so we can't have to share the stage with other people, so I'm good with that, so we do what we can to accommodate, because we're using that facility without cost, so we do what we can to facilitate what they do, so and they're pretty busy, so.
Yeah.
So, which is a good thing, so.
And when we were outside of those concerts, Kurt Wagen would sell concessions, but he would give us some money back just to help us to. A bit, not very much, just a bit.
And how many concerts total do you guys do a year-ish?
8.
Let's see, July 8 is our last concert.
So we do we do
One,
about
two, three,
7
five,
or 8
six,
concerts. It depends
There's
on
2 in July, and we start on the 27th of May,
4, 6,
and then
7.
3, 10, 17, 24, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, with the July 4th, I guess that'll be 8 concerts then. But we do plan to play for the July 4th, assuming that we can have it, and there's no rain.
Yeah.
Any further questions?
We appreciate the
Yes, thank
contribution
you.
from the city,
Yeah.
and we got positive med pack. So I think, was it last week, the one person said, I think it's the best concert ever. I persuaded the OU president to attend last night, so that's wonderful.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, getting the word out. Very good.
Outside of city funding, you guys have no other source of funding, maybe some donations here and there.
Yeah,
Once in a while.
yeah. But we don't have
Private
any
citizen
plans.
will give us a little bit
Yeah.
to help us out with that.
This is your primary source
Far
of
and few
funding.
between.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then next we have Paul Bean, who is buying one more stamp this
Yes.
year then.
Apparently. I didn't realize that till I saw the graph, so
Buying
I'm
one
happy
more.
to sacrifice the dollar. So put that back in your coffers.
Put that in the minutes.
You can have an extra stamp. Just saw that, we were laughing. Oh, that's for a whole dollar. Sorry about that. No, first, appreciate the support city's given FCDC over the years. It's been tremendous and it's critical to what we do, obviously. Not asking for an increase, anywhere. We are basically, with hopefully, something happened in Proximity Park. The board had a strategic planning session this spring and we're focusing on 4 areas. So housing, childcare, workforce and support of existing industries. So we've got leadership teams now for each of those groups and they're meeting and coming up with different strategies and programs. So you'll start to hear a lot more on that and see it in my reports. We'll start to break down those groups in my monthly report. I am going to the board tomorrow. The housing group is interested in trying to get a little more information out there for senior housing. So if my board approves it tomorrow, then I'll contract with our housing study folks and do another study focused just on Ottawa for senior housing. And then we can use that as a marketing tool and information for developers, and I'll of course share that with the city. And so continue to do those types of things to try and keep moving forward. But I appreciate the public-private partnership, just like you did today and are working on with the development. It's really healthy and what the community needs from my perspective. So just want to say thank you for your willingness to work with the developers, and she does a phenomenal job. And can't say enough good things about how she works with our developers. So we've had a couple of meetings and got some more coming up with potential development. One's pretty significant. So we continue to work that pretty hard, but happy to answer any questions.
I'm glad you're looking at childcare. I think that's one of the legs of the stool that's critical in any community, and we seem to have and seem to be a struggling stool leg that we've had trouble with. I see you got some coming up too with regard to some people helping a little bit together. So
Yeah.
I think just briefly touch on that a little bit, or what's the.
Well, from the childcare perspective, again, we've got a leadership team that's focused on that and already had 2 or 3 meetings. We've met with some potential operators, and then we've also are starting to have some conversations about how can we get the capital to get a center up and running for an operator to come into that's really the challenge. It seems like the operators that you have don't have the capital and the capital can't find an operator. So you're trying to bring all that together. We have visited with, larger national chains, but our market's not big enough for them to say, yeah, we'll come to Ottawa or Franklin County. So that's been a tough nut. We've still got one that's, got a local franchisee that's thinking about it, but that's probably a year to 18 months away, before they would make a move. So we're continuing to look at different options. You know, can we get local industry to partner? And, you know, is a particular industry have space within their existing facility, or could they put on an additional space for a childcare center that the community could use, but obviously it would certainly be a benefit to their recruitment and retention. You know, what role can the school district play, those types of things. So kind of just going at it from all angles, and just that's what I like about these groups, is really get a group of people that look at it from different viewpoints, and you know, how do we tackle this problem? But we'll see where we go. But
I'd see, also, I'd see that senior housing.
Yeah.
I was thinking it might be something good.
you know, when we get old, we'll need a place to go, right?
One comment I have,
Yeah.
it's nothing crazy, but just I appreciate what you do as well, because some of these things that you've done, like the housing study, would be something that we would have to do anyway, had you not.
Right.
And so that would be staff time and city money we would have been spending on that anyway. So I feel like that takes some of that off of our plate. And as well as, you know, if you mentioned if senior housing study comes up, I mean, that's just another thing. So we see, or I see exactly how those things benefit us directly, and appreciate those.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here as well.
No, thank you.
Are you seeing kind of, you know, as you serve greater Franklin County, so you know, there's a lot of growth in Wellsville. We're hoping for growth in kind of all these smaller communities as things are coming up. Do you see a need to ever potentially expand FCDC from one employee? Bandwidth wise, kind of for the whole county, the city, you know, especially like the list that we're trying to ask, I think. Do you see a need for that maybe upcoming as?
I think potentially could be, and depending, you know, with these leadership teams, if we get some real traction in different areas, that gets the bandwidth pretty thin, pretty fast. I'm doing a lot of work on grants. City staff's been awesome to work with. We're working on a grant right now that's coming due on Tuesday. And so there's a number of let's just say it's a target-rich environment. And so I could see at some point the evolution of FCDC, especially if we're not just focused on an industrial park, but we're really working on all these different areas where you could probably staff up. Yeah. I don't see that in the immediate future, but I think potentially down the road, Zach, that's not out of the realm. It just kind of depends on what, you know, the city of Ottawa and the county and the organization wants FCDC to do, and how active and how engaged in different areas would drive that, I think, yeah.
Paul, with the growth that you've seen in Wellsville and the potential growth that everybody talks about in Wellsville, have you had any conversations with them about their contribution and if theirs may be increased?
Yeah, what we agreed last year, I got a pretty good increase from them because I looked at, just kind of like you saying, I looked at what's the per capita that Ottawa's paying, what's per capita that Wellsville's paying. So we kind of leveled that playing field and had a pretty good increase with Wellsville. So we'll continue to look at that number, and as that grows, and that was the agreement. I said, you know, I'm asking for a pretty big increase. You need to understand as you grow, I'm going to continue to ask for an increase. So that groundwork's been laid. They understand that. I don't foresee a lot of pushback. The way they operate is basically, their process is a little more informal, and so I'll submit a invoice for next year. And so at that point, into this year, 1st of January, I'll look at some population numbers and reconfigure and see if we need to do an increase or not. But if not this year, definitely the following year, they'll need to pay a little more because they do have a lot of housing going up.
Well, and I just like the mayor was talking about, I'm sure that they see the benefit in FCDC
Oh, yeah.
too, and what they're getting out of it also. And, you know, some of the, sometimes it's the more you put in, the more you get, you know, so hopefully, there's some smart folks up in Wellsville, so I think they see that for sure. Your dues, are they holding steady, or have you seen a decrease, increase? How are they?
They've been pretty steady. We had a couple, 2 or 3 drop this year, but we picked up 2 or 3. So we're kind of at a plateau of around 90. And I expect that to kind of stabilize, if not grow a little bit, because of what we're doing with these individual teams. We're gonna be a little more directly involved as a group. Where I think there'll be some, let's just say, some eyes open that, boy, we maybe wanna join this group to help us with that project. So I'm kind of optimistic we might pick up a few just because of the way we're going about it, a little bit of a reorg.
Thank you.
And Paul, have you had any thoughts, just kind of being the Eco Devo for the county in working with the school district for some potential funding from them as well, since the growth of the community, jobs, opportunities for students graduating, plus families coming to town is really tied kind of directly to the school district as well as the city and county, to kind of go to them for some potential funding as well?
Yeah, in fact, year before last, I went back to Dr. Cobb's and asked for an increase, and they agreed to do that. And so, again, as we grow and develop, I continue to look at how it's impacting certain partners. And what's the value they're getting, and you know, do we need to raise that price or not? I've been very resistant to increasing our dues overall to this point. And we've been able to generate pretty good revenue through dues, and then with e-community, I mean, again, this year we picked up 14,000 by selling tax credits. So we've been able to generate other revenue, and then there's some grant programs I can get through Network Kansas for e-community. So we've been able to increase some revenue in that regard, but and we grew from roughly just over 60 members to 90. And so we generated revenue there, but we've plateaued that the last couple of years. So kind of need to think about other revenue streams, or do we increase? How do we go about that? Because the other piece of this is, as these leadership teams work on these projects, just like the housing group said, well, we want a senior housing study. Well, that's $5,000. That'll come out of reserves. You know, childcare is probably gonna want, you know, each of those I suspect will go to my board and say, hey, this is where we want our organization to spend some money. So we'll start to see some of those expenses. And then I've got an audit, not this year, but next year. So I've got to look at that. So revenue is something I've got to take a really good look at. We're blessed that we have good reserves. I'm not a fan of spending that down all the way to zip. But I'm also not a fan if, you know, we've got money in the bank that is just sitting there not moving us forward. So it's a balance, and work with the board on that. But yeah, I look at some of, you know, the like school districts, probably at some point, if we really get some traction on some of these workforce programs, will heavily impact the school districts. And so there, in my mind, need to be a revisit of the dues.
So currently they're just part of the dues, they're just a member, not like a contributing organization?
Yeah, they're a member, and they pay a little bit more than a standard member does, and have for years. But like I said, we've done a lot with USD 290, and so that's why I reached out to Dr. Cobb's a couple of years ago, and he was happy to say, yeah, we'll up our contribution. I suspect in the next year or two, I'll go back to the other districts and listen. I mean, my costs are going up.
Yeah.
So. But I don't need that dollar. I'll tough it out this year.
Oh, it's in here.
Well, that's up to you. If you want to cut the dollar.
It's gonna be a long debate.
You know,
It's in here.
can't wait till that meeting. I'm gonna be watching.
Line items.
Any other questions for Paul?
I appreciate the support,
Thank you.
guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
And next is Ottawa Main Street. Their request this year is 47,000. It's a $5,000 increase over last year, and would go to support the expansion of the administrative and operational capacity.
Thank you, guys. I would like to start out by saying I can't believe we're already back here. We have come a long ways. I have to kind of look back at where we started, and how much we've been able to do, and part of because of your guys' funding. And if we don't have that funding, we're not sustainable. We have been able to, since handing this in, I've been able to go to full-time. So that's been huge for our organization. We have done a lot this past year and plan to continue of showing business owners how they can stack things. We've been able to fortunately get, a couple grants so far, that are for development downtown, which then helps, the tax roll back into you guys. And then we are currently in our membership drive, so we're looking pretty good as of right now, but we don't wrap ours up until end of July, beginning of August.
Any questions for Sarah?
So did you say you're full-time now,
Yeah,
included in the 25 budget?
and as of right now, yeah,
Okay,
we're able to do that because of Piccadilly.
gotcha. Which probably wasn't happening prior to 24.
Exactly, we
Okay, so
did
there's
not,
the offset.
there's the offset, so, we did not project, I mean, obviously, we wanted to have a successful, fundraiser, but we had no idea what that was gonna look like the first year. And now our second year in, we had another successful year and kind of in doing our due diligence of taxpayer dollars, didn't make sense to ask for that full if we are able to have some successful fundraising and continue doing that. And we're looking at other fundraising avenues as well and what we can do to bring those funds forward.
Yeah, it's like I remember last year, we were talking about you going full-time, which allowed you to apply for various grants.
Yeah.
Have you been successful at this point?
So we have, we were able to apply for, and we received a HEAL grant. Last week, it was announced that because we had just barely squeaked by in the application of having me as full-time, submit the rooms grants, and we were awarded one of those, which was $50,000 for another development downtown. And then I just signed documents yesterday for another grant that I can't announce. That's coming our way.
And that takes up a lot of time. I mean, that's.
It
full-time
does,
work.
but we're also showing, showing individuals and business owners how we can stack items. For example, both those HEAL in the rooms, we're working with tax credit dollars or applying for tax credits. As an organization, we are then using that to we're not putting it into our IWW, but we're working to create another fund source, just like our IWW 0% interest loan, to where we're showing how we can make these new roofs or an HVAC or windows, all these things that the buildings need downtown, to keep them up to, deteriorating. If people are planning to work on things, then showing them that there are incentives out there to do it and make it a little easier on the pocket. And then we're using it much like a grant, helping them in the application process, and then putting those funds that were awarded back to loan out to other businesses.
Well, I will say in support of you, that we promoted downtown, that in consequence produces more sales tax dollars, which we get a part of. I know our sales tax dollars are down, seem like for the year, something, I can't think 1%, but I'm not sure. We're hoping that we see that go beyond what we've been getting in the past. And it may not be anything to do with you guys, but it seems like sales tax in general are down. But at least we get some of this money back by virtue of your work and getting sales tax dollars. I get that.
And I would say that right now the economy in general is not in a great spot. So businesses aren't thriving necessarily. They're kind of, some of them are in survival mode, so whatever we can do to give them incentives and help them out is what we're there for.
And not to completely beat it to death, but I also think this would be an excellent source for the TGT funds, because that's the exact purpose, is to bring people in and have them spending money here. And so just something to keep on our radar, which we'll potentially be discussing next week.
And is there a balance sheet in here? I don't remember. Was there a balance sheet or is that? Maybe it was in the earlier part of the thing in the month.
I was gonna say, it goes with my monthly.
Look at it.
And there was, this actually might have been the one, I didn't look at the full pack. There's one month that our financials weren't approved, so they had to table for the next month, and that might be where you guys are at. If so, that you have been caught up now.
And you are renting space at the chamber, right? Okay, you're there. Good.
Yeah, there's a, let's see, a statement through June in the earlier part of our packet.
Yeah, okay.
Later. Any other questions for Sarah? Currently. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
No, I think I skipped. There we go.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. Fireworks is our next item. I didn't mean to skip over you. I knew you were on there.
Gotcha.
Ryland's here to discuss firework request.
It's right around the corner.
Mhm.
As I say, we got less than a month away and we'll be doing our 2025 shoot. And as you guys obviously know, and the way that we do this partner request, the funding that we would have gotten approved last year is going towards the fireworks that were purchased this year. We are gonna be able to continue to keep the same level of show that we had last year. Prices are increasing, which isn't a surprise. I believe I ran that number. I think we're spending somewhere around like 18-19% more this year than we did last year when you include the fireworks themselves, but also the means to be able to shoot the fireworks and then also the insurance as well. So costs continue to rise, but that definitely doesn't slow us down. I guess I don't know, kind of go back a step. History wise, the chamber's been doing this, I believe about 6 or 7 years now. The chamber's overseeing fireworks for the city of Ottawa. And that looks like a committee, but really I kind of view the chamber's piece of the fireworks shoot really from the fundraising side and the organization side, and the city of Ottawa helps tremendously in regards to the purchasing, the obtaining, then the shooting of the fireworks. Really, without the city of Ottawa, there wouldn't be a fireworks shoot. But the chamber's happy to be able to come alongside and be able to make requests not only to the county, but also to private businesses and individuals to be able to help raise funds as well. So at the moment being, that looks like about, let me think of those numbers. This past year would have been $4,000 at the city of Ottawa. You would have been able to approve. I believe the county did just about $2,000, and then privately, we also raised about $2,000 from businesses and individuals. So.
And I'm not going to attempt to say the word, but with next year being our 250th anniversary, I'm assuming that's the increase. It's just
Absolutely.
a bigger show, kind of going more all out for that show.
Absolutely. No, having conversations with the two individuals that shoot, we do have the tubes necessary. And actually, there's already been conversations about the creation of a handful more to be able to do larger fireworks. And so, no, with this money would help be able to create a handful of those tubes, but also be able to fill all the tubes rather than only doing a portion of what we're doing at the moment being. At the moment, we're not using all of our tubes because we can't afford the fireworks to be able to stick them. Yeah. And so that's exactly why you're seeing that significant increases because 250th anniversary of the United States, and then also the summer being the World Cup, we sure assume that there's going to be a big chance to be able to draw individuals in, and we hope to be able to put on a good show. We hope it's a blast.
Sit too close to skid more.
Well, thank you for putting it in at an increase, because I planned to ask about that anyway. Do you know from a manpower perspective, do we have bandwidth to kind of grow, or would this amount almost cap us where we're at bandwidth for people? I know we've talked about tubes and filling that. Kind of what does that portion look like in terms of growing that show, at least for just 1 year, if we're trying to put on a blast?
That's a great question. Yeah, the shoot, whether it's the setup, the shoot itself, and also the teardown, historically has been volunteers who make that happen. The city of Ottawa last year would have been able to have some of their staff help with both the setup and the teardown. And there are city of Ottawa individuals who are doing the shooting as well. So because the city of Ottawa's employee help, that's been massive. Before it was a group of about a dozen individuals who did all of that. And so having that paid staff to be able to come in and help with the laborious aspect of it, which is, going out there on a hot morning and setting everything up. But then the shoot would just still rely on individuals. I believe the city of Ottawa has said that they would also be able to, if there's employees that are interested in participating that way, they can this year. And so I would imagine, hopefully some individuals take advantage of that. But in the end, it would still rely on volunteers to be able to make that shoot happen. So these numbers don't pay for individuals to be able to shoot the fireworks. That's all labor of love.
Okay.
That takes certain people to do that, right? Yeah, you betcha. You have to have certain, there's certification. You have to be able to have so many individuals with certain certification to be able to do the shoot. But that does not stop an individual like yourself to be able to participate.
I'm not
Some of it's also a push of a button, to be fair, and some of it's also fire watch as well, to make sure that if something were to catch them, we have people ready with water, be able to put those out. And then obviously from the cleanup side, when you blow something up in the air, that stuff's gotta come down somewhere. And so cleaning up as well looks like a good group of volunteers who, regardless of how fast you run, picking up trash is a little bit easier.
Seen him run and it's actually pretty fast.
Oh. On the law. But yeah, so that's where those funds go towards: the purchasing of the fireworks, the supplies needed to be able to shoot the fireworks, and then the insurance for the fireworks. And then some others, like we do a mailing for our private donations, and so those funds also go to be able to make that mailing, which is like $100 or something like that. And we make well more than that back in private donations to be able to afford those costs.
Do you know what your total spend is estimated to be? You're asking for 9,500 from us, 1,950 from the county. I know you were about
And
2,000.
1950 would have been for this year, because we won't actually ask
okay,
for
from the county.
2026's TGT funds until 2026.
Okay.
They don't do theirs a year in advance. So
Okay.
that 1950 was for 2025.
Okay, then do you know what kind of total amount you're looking to potentially spend?
I don't have that number, and some of that will probably be based off of, because we have to do it so far in advance with you all, to see what you guys say, but definitely intentions are to be able to ask for an increased amount from the county as well. And I guess I should have mentioned this, and I think I might have put it in the packet. We also did pursue a grant opportunity with Evergy as well. And they, for the 2025 shoot, have donated $2,000 in the form of a grant for the fireworks shoot. And our intentions are definitely to be able to try to make that ask once more as well. So this is increased. Hopefully the county will be increased, and then like I said, hopefully we can secure that grant once more. I'm not sure how that works reoccurring. This is the first time we've received that, but we're very pleased with being able to see that come in as well.
Yeah.
So Rylan, with an increase like this, should the folks watching the fireworks display expect twice as much as they usually get?
That's exactly what they should expect. Yeah, as I said, the bigger the firework itself, and I can't remember the terms. If Rudy or Blake were here, they would have been able to explain it. But there's like numbers, and so if you figure a 2 is a pop, and then an 8 is a massive boom, and so those 8s cost like 10, 15 times more than one of those 2s. So I think like try to put it into numbers in perspective. Maybe one of those 2s were to be like $20-30. One of those 8s might be more like $200-300. So with more funds, we'd be able to purchase more larger fireworks, which then would be able to put on a more impressive show.
A bigger, better, longer fireworks display.
Yes, sir.
If we could get silent ones, because I don't like fireworks, then maybe that would.
That's a drone show.
I was gonna say,
You-
Sounds real exciting.
Fountains, we could do
Yeah.
some fountains. No, that would be lovely.
thought it was funny. We
Not the
had
screaming ones.
some high school students ask if they could record the show for a project that they were doing, which I was like, absolutely, that'd be great. I don't personally want to watch a recorded show of fireworks, but maybe you do. Maybe you're actually the audience that they
Still
were
don't want to
looking
see
at.
it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. If the sound is off, though, you can hit
Yep.
mute and then.
Don't like any of it.
Oh, okay.
It's
Everyone's
pretty, but-
TikTok story, you know,
Yeah,
or
it'll be all over.
Snapchat story on the
Yeah.
5th is just clicking through fireworks.
Yeah.
Spell
Very
that.
good.
Yeah. Well, I think that's awesome. I think, you know, there's a FIFA World Cup game in the 2nd in Kansas City. So right around that time, hopefully there will be a lot of people in the area, and, you know, hopefully some of this and hopefully other groups can help even advertise. And I know that there will be some funds necessary to really get the word out, to be like, we're doing, you know, something big,
Yeah.
for lack of another dad joke. And so I think that's a great opportunity. I think that's something really exciting for next year for the community. And maybe those folks, while they're here, will spend money that funds TGT for the next year.
Just cross. That's exactly the idea.
Yeah, hopefully the hotels are full and
Yeah.
those people want to come watch a fireworks show.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I guess the tariffs, unless that changes, and most of these come from China, don't they? I
Mm.
reckon they, the tariffs are affecting us or not, but that still being negotiated, doing this.
I'm not exactly sure how that goes into the price increase this year or not, but obviously prices have gone up, so whether it's specifically related to that, I'm not sure. But I do think it's probably safe to bet that, at least since I've been here anyways, the prices increase for fireworks every year. It hasn't slowed down. There's a really big jump there after, I guess it was in 2021, but it's still steadily increasing.
And you had mentioned insurance, and I think all of us pay insurance in some form or fashion. No, it's just crazy. Is that through the Chamber Foundation? Who holds the insurance for kind of that?
So maybe I should have taken a step back there too. So yeah, the Chautauqua Festival Committee, which is the group that puts on the fireworks, is the committee of the Chamber of Commerce. But all funds funnel through the Chamber Foundation, which is a 501(c)(3). So in regards to making those donations, those are tax deductible. In regards to the insurance, so really everything, yes, the insurance would be purchased through the Chamber Foundation, but the city's additionally insured. So and that's required for the city to be able to shoot them here in town. So.
Well, you can mark me down to donate some snakes. And then we'll just see what happens.
Everyone gather around.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Raymond? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we have the request from the Elizabeth Layton Center, for this year, it's $7,807. That's $710 more than the 25 request.
Hello, Mayor, Commissioners. Thank you for taking the time to meet with ELC today. I have a couple of little prepared pieces of information just to share a little update about what's happening at ELC in this last year since I've seen you. So, part of the reason I'm here is because the need for mental health and substance use services in our community is very high, continues to grow. And so our mission is to provide comprehensive and integrated behavioral health services for the community. So I'm happy to report that in 2024, we served more individuals than ever before at ELC. Technically, we served 4,404 unique individuals. When we break that down, there were 2,000 individuals served just in our Franklin County area. And breaking it down even further, it was 992 Ottawans that we served in 2024. When I look at the US Census Bureau statistics for the population of Ottawa, and I compare that to 992 individuals served, that means we served 7.8% of the entire city last year. So that's the impact that we had on individuals served. That doesn't represent the impact to their family members, to their neighbors, to their schoolmates, to the community at large. And so we're happy to provide that service. We're happy to provide that impact. But we know that the needs are growing. And I can share more stats on that or more information if you'd like to know any details in terms of locally or nationwide, what the research says on that. But one thing I wanted to highlight today, I don't know if I've talked about this much before, but we are your designated community mental health center for Franklin and Miami counties. And as a designated community mental health center, there's a couple of statutory safety net functions that we serve. One of those is to provide 24/7 emergency services. And so last year, we served that to the capacity of 779 crisis assessments plus 338 mental health screens for the state hospital. So definitely fulfilling that safety net function. The other safety net function is that we provide services to qualifying residents regardless of the ability to pay. And so this is some information I did want to highlight this year because our charitable care in 2024 was higher than we have ever predicted. Last year, ELC served 14.5% of our clients had no insurance whatsoever. That was a 4% increase over 2023. And also in 2024, we provided $1.2 million in charitable care write-offs. So $1.2 million in services that were unfunded and written off by ELC. In Franklin County, that was a 34% increase over the previous year. So that was a surprise to us. That wasn't the level of charitable care that we had predicted for last year. But again, honored to provide that service and so happy that more individuals than ever are coming through the doors of ELC. But you can see with that kind of picture, funding sources such as City of Ottawa remain extremely important to us to help balance that load and to help continue that safety net function. So as you see here, we're requesting this year $7,807. That is a $710 increase over last year's award. And there's three key areas that this funding is used to offset our costs. One of those is just to continue providing that 24/7 emergency service care. The other is to help supplement some of our staff time in important community partnership meetings.
So there's a lot of those that we attend. The Franklin County Coalition to End Homelessness is an example, the local law enforcement planning council, emergency planning council, and pretty much any partner in this area that's willing to look with us at how we can make lives here more healthy and stable. The third area that we spend this funding is probably one of the most important areas, and that is to help offset administrative support for the Ottawa Police Department's co-responder program. This is an extremely productive and positive partnership. I think you've heard separate reports from Chief Weingartner about the impact in Ottawa. But some of the main outcomes that we get excited about are helping to identify and get folks into behavioral health care earlier in the spectrum, which is more effective and it's more, it's a cheaper way to go with the service delivery. And also safety factors. So seeing reduction of force, seeing individuals themselves who might be at risk of harm to themselves or others being treated respectfully with dignity and in a way that reduces the safety concerns. So those are the ways we propose to spend that funding. And we have a lot of exciting areas to grow in the next year. I can talk more about that if you'd like. But we are looking with great anticipation and a little fear at the federal budget, which is being decided at this time. So Medicaid cuts are kind of on that proposal list, which would be a huge detriment to ELC should those Medicaid funds be cut. So those are the reasons why our partnership together remains extremely strong and important, and appreciate that consideration. Would really love to take your questions.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for everything you guys do for the community. As you had mentioned, kind of specifically the crisis co-responder, that position, integration with the police department as a partnership, and how successful that has been. Obviously, my guess would be that position doesn't cost you $7,000.
Correct. So the position cost, just for salary benefits, runs through the City of Ottawa, Ottawa Police Department's budget. The portion or some of what the 7,000 helps to offset is our administrative and clinical oversight of Megan Thomas, who is our co-responder. So there is about 3 hours per week of administrative supervision, clinical supervision, group supervision, training costs, things of that nature. So it's more that administrative piece of Megan's position that this funding helps to offset.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Look at your board of trustees. Of course, we're glad that Paul is here. He's on your board, and so I appreciate his contribution. I know Sarah's been on your board in the past as secretary, so we see some volunteers there. We would appreciate that too. Hey, your increase is a 1% increase, basically, right? So I think it's next to Paul's request. That's pretty close. You don't have to pay that out of your pocket, though.
I'll ask Paul.
Yeah. But yeah, but I do see a really, I seem like even in times of prosperity or recession or whatever, there's still a need for you guys, whatever it is. It doesn't necessarily equate to our economic situation all the time. But yeah, it's always a need out there. We thank you for all you do. I didn't realize how many people in Ottawa. I was gonna ask you that next. And the county, do they help you out in any way?
They absolutely do. Yes, both Franklin and Miami County provide funding support. Franklin is about $180,000 to $185,000.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate all you do, and I definitely know the need is going up rather than down, unfortunately, and but I hear nothing but great things about the relationship with the police department, the crisis co-responder, and those services provided and helping try to de-escalate things before they become an issue. So definitely appreciate that.
A few years ago, I know you were here and we had kind of even talked to you about increasing your ask because of the services you provide. Last year, correct me if I'm wrong, you were kind of asking for a portion towards a vehicle that would help kind of facilitate movement of some folks who are in treatment, different stuff like that. Without that funding going through from us, were you able to do that? Is that something still on your radar in time, or kind of how is that kind of previous request kind of panned out?
Appreciate you asking that. So that vehicle was necessary for us. So it was purchased. It's in use right now. Our summer programming launched last week. And so lots of kiddos being transported around in that vehicle. So that was a request. That was kind of something new for us to try asking for something a little bigger and different. That having not panned out, I went back to the original request.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks very
Thank you
much.
so much for your time.
Our next partner is the Chamber of Commerce. There was a request, this kind of starts into our second section of our overall funding request summary. So there was a request last year that was not approved and continued request for this year.
Well, I guess now I realize, I don't know if I stated my name whenever I came up for fireworks. But again, Ryland Miller, President and CEO of the Ottawa Area Chamber of Commerce, and I'm joined here by Chamber Board Chairperson Jacob Boyd, who works at Edward Jones here in town. And thank you for joining me, Jacob, as we have this conversation. And thank you for allowing us to be able to come back and have this conversation once more. Again, appreciate very deeply the support that we receive from the city, and really the way I view it, the city of Ottawa, when they succeed, our chamber succeeds. And I hope you guys view that the same way, reversed. And so the reason we're here is because we're looking for that support financially as we continue to strengthen Ottawa's economic vitality, community connection, and then also the small business support that we give our chamber members and really the community as a whole. If you're familiar with our board, I know Mayor Pro Tem Clayton is currently sitting on the board. When we start our meetings, we always mention our mission statement. And if you don't mind, I'd like to read that now. And the mission of the Ottawa Area Chamber of Commerce is to promote growth and economic vitality of its membership, to provide leadership of the advancement of the business climate and advocacy towards improving the overall quality of life in the region. And it's all right with y'all. I'd like to be able to have Jacob share a testimony of his experience with the chamber.
Certainly, you bet. First off, thank you guys for allowing me to speak for a few minutes. Like Ryland said, my name is Jacob Boyd, and I work at Edward Jones just on First and Main. I'm serving as the Chamber Board President for the 2025 year, and I'm honored to do that. Both of us, and on behalf of the board, appreciate the consideration for the partnership from the city of Ottawa. So Ryland will speak to this, but one of the tenets of our application was helping with the engagement that the chamber provides. And so, like Ryland said, I want to share my testimony as part of that. So I'm not originally from this area. I came to Ottawa in 2020, right in the middle of COVID, summer 2020. So early on, I was advised to join the Chamber of Commerce, and my first coffee was at Rock Creek. We were still social distancing, and John Cohen, who was the CEO at the time, made a point to introduce me and ask that I speak, which I'm really not the kind of guy that enjoys speaking in front of a bunch of people, but I did. And I think early on, I got the sense that the chamber was an inclusive organization, a place that I could go and meet people and become part of the community. So fast forward 5 years, I've served on the chamber board for 3 of those years, and I've been in dozens of board meetings, board retreats, staffing interviews, and I speak at every board meeting, or I speak at every chamber coffee now, which I'm speaking in front of you guys. So I'm put myself out there, and now I'm doing all this. So I guess what I wanted to say is, and you guys, I've met several of you through the board. You guys know Ryland and Sharon, you know they're Ottawa first. It's been a privilege to work with them and to play a role in the organization. And so as someone who showed up as kind of an outsider, really being a part of the chamber has given me an easier pathway to meet people. Ryland's helped me with referrals for landlords, to insurance, other contacts. My wife makes the comment that I know everybody, and I think that's because I'm on the chamber board. So yeah, the chamber's provided me with, a place to be involved in the business climate, to make connections. Like I say, they just disseminate information timely, and I think they make Ottawa a better place. And so, yeah, thank you guys again for the consideration, for giving me time to speak.
And really, it's a pleasure working with Jacob and really working with our entire board. We actually have a really large board that's made up of over 20 individuals, and 12 of those spots are at-large positions that are made up of our membership. But the other half is made up by our partners. And so it looks like the city of Ottawa. So like I said, Mayor Pro Tem Clayton, and then also City Manager Silcott currently sits on our board, representation from the county, the library, the rec, more auditorium, hospital, the list goes on. CF School District, our education partners with Ottawa University as well. And so we have a fantastic board. As I go to conferences from a regional standpoint, I have conversations with other chamber execs. I feel very blessed to have the board that I do, and really the community that we do, that I'm currently seeing be so engaged. Whether that's at our networking events, whether that's through our community programming, whether that's through leadership programming like LFC. We have a ton of momentum at the moment being, which is very exciting, and we have a lot of people in the right place. community leaders like yourself that, participate. And so, that's very exciting as well. And, before I move forward, I wanted to touch on a brief history, if you guys don't mind. I recently had conversations with the, local historical society. Diana helped me out and kind of gave, because I was curious, what's the history behind the chamber? How did it start? How old are we? Was really the point I was trying to get to. And I guess I don't know if I got that answer black and white, but in November of 1915, there's an article in the Ottawa Herald that states that there's this cry out from the business community that there needs to be a business club that helps advocate for community organizations. And you don't see anything until it looks like early 1916. There's now this organization called the Franklin County's Retailers Association. They're having meetings. And then it wasn't until the end of 1916 that you see that this Franklin County Retailers Association choose to be able to add and Chamber of Commerce to their name. And so you can imagine it's a bit of a mouthful, Franklin County Retailers Association and Chamber of Commerce, every time you wanted to address them. And you then see an article in beginning of 1917, and it's now just called the Chamber of Commerce. And I think that's probably just as humans, we shorten stuff. And so moving forward, you start seeing article after article about the Chamber of Commerce and what they're doing. In 1917, they adopt bylaws and a constitution. And then again, articles continue to consist. And then for what I saw on my side before having these conversations with Diana, our articles of incorporation to the state weren't until 1934. So I kind of was like, okay, 1934 was the start, but obviously not. This is a over 100-year-old organization that's obviously shifted and changed over those 100 years, adapted to the environment, but continue to be a consistent place for information, support, and advocacy for the Ottawa and Franklin County community. And also prior to this conversation, we would have done internally as an office, reached out to our state partners, our state chambers, and got some information from them. I think last year you guys I think you would have asked the question, how many chambers get supported by their city and county? I didn't have those numbers then, but I have some numbers now that I was hoping to share. I also like my data, and so if I can share some of that with you. I am on the board for CCEKS, which is Chamber of Commerce Executives of Kansas. That's a statewide organization for chambers in Kansas. 81 different chambers make up that organization. So that's the 81 organizations that we reached out to in regards to the survey. And we heard back from 55 of them, which I thought was pretty good, actually. And out of those 55 chambers that replied, 33 of those 55 received funding from both their city and county in different ways. Some of that is very specific and restricted for different purposes, like maybe tourism, economic development, workforce development. Some of it goes specifically to overhead costs. Some of that looks like in-kind trades in regards to space and utilities and things of that nature. Some of it just goes to general budget, but in total, about 60% of the chambers that we surveyed received funding from their municipality. And we also asked a handful of other questions because I was kind of curious, well, are these outlying chambers and communities that are not of equal size to Ottawa or our chamber? And that's not what we found at all. What we did find was the average number of chamber members that these chambers have is 303, and our chamber currently has 286 chamber members. So very similar in regards to membership size. If you exclude, when we're talking about revenue, if you exclude chambers that make over $1 million in revenue, the reason I did, well, I'll show you both numbers. If you exclude that $1 million in revenue chambers, so you take them all, average out the revenue, it's $286,000 a year. Ours is currently $234,000. So again, a little bit smaller. If you include those that make over $1 million, that jumps all the way to almost $800,000 in revenue. And so it seemed like more sense to be able to just kind of scoot them out of the equation. The smallest income from a chamber that received funding was $74,000. The biggest being over $3 million, which was excluded from that number. And then also in regards to community size, I also again excluded metropolitan areas from this because it skewed those results, but the average population of those chambers that responded was 15,000 individuals. Ours is somewhere, 12, 13,000 individuals live in the city of Ottawa. And so I say all this and hopefully I didn't bore you, but 60% of the communities in Kansas who have chambers support their chambers financially. And they are very similar size to our chamber. They live in communities that are similar size to our community. And so I guess I make that point to say that I don't believe our chamber is too big or too small to receive support in this way. Many others are doing it and they're seeing results from it. And so I appreciate you again to be able to allowing me to bring this forward to you. And if I could finish one thing, when I was looking through the documents, I don't know if my cover letter that was in my packet was submitted, and so if you don't mind, I'd like to read that to you, just make sure you hear it. It reads this, Dear Mayor and Commissioners, in the season of momentum and opportunity for the city of Ottawa, the Ottawa Area Chamber of Commerce is proud to submit our partnership request for your consideration. Our community is growing in pride, in visibility, and in potential. Businesses are showing up, residents are engaged. New partners are stepping forward to invest in this next chapter of Ottawa's story. And at the center of that energy is a chamber that is evolving, building bridges between sectors, lifting up small business, cultivating leadership, and creating spaces that celebrate what it means to live, work, and belong here. This request is more than a funding proposal, it's an invitation. It's an invitation to join us in growing something bigger than any one event, business, or initiative, to invest in the infrastructure of connection and the programs, partnerships, and people that power a resilient local economy and a vibrant civic culture. To support the chamber in a way that matches the pace and possibilities of where Ottawa is heading. We are ready to do more together, and with your support, we will. And so that is my presentation, but I would love to have some questions if you have them. It seems like you guys are primed and ready to go.
Well, these other cities you're mentioning, they contribute, and that's beyond the membership dues. We're talking about additional.
That's a fantastic point. The city of Ottawa is a chamber member along with Franklin County government. And that is that 60% is not including membership dues, but these are whether it's partnership requests or some other form of funding.
Okay, and I do see you pay property tax of $4,450, which I know part of that comes to city too, so if it's about 25%, it's about $1,100, but yeah, so thank you for contributing property tax for us.
We love our downtown building.
That helps, that's right, I just want to bring that up, yeah.
Rylan, thank you for being here. Jacob, thank you for being here. I appreciate how you mentioned, when you came to Ottawa when you were new and you went to Chamber Coffees and started really meeting people. And I know I've found that, I've been in this seat now for a few years, and prior to that, I don't think I'd ever been to a Chamber Coffee. Since being on this seat, I started going, and you really do have an opportunity, like you said, to meet people, network. And a lot of these community partners that you see around the room are in those spaces. One thing that you offer the community, could you kind of touch on LFC a little bit? I know as we kind of think about and we see the classes, how much staff for the city does that, how many members of the community and what that kind of does for them, or what that really even is.
Yeah, no, I'm not afraid of a shameless plug. We are actually currently accepting applications for the 25-26 session of Leadership Franklin County. And that is a 40-year-old initiative that started under the Chamber of Commerce. And that looks like a board that is made up of former class members. And that is open to individuals who either work and or live in our community. In Franklin County specifically, it's not just the city of Ottawa. And that looks like individuals coming from industries of all types, whether it's healthcare, financial institutions, public and private sectors, nonprofits and more, sometimes even just individuals. And that is a class of 20 people that move through that course each calendar year. Usually one or two might not end up making it to the course, whether because they changed jobs or moved away, but consistently graduating 17, 18, 19, 20 individuals each year, making up an alumni base of 300-400 individuals who've taken Leadership Franklin County. And what that does is really three things. One of those being a better understanding of how our community works as a whole. So that looks like taking tours and hearing from panels from individuals, because each class has a different segment of our community. So one day is local government, one day is healthcare, one day is serving the underserved. And so you get to hear from individuals that work in that scope. The second bit is appreciation for the community as a whole, as you're seeing what it takes to be able to run a community of any size, but including the one they're living in. You see individuals that from a retention standpoint, I don't have those numbers, but I would sure assume it's contributing to that, because people are more aware of what it takes to be able to live in a community and how it all works, and who's helping who. And then lastly, the network that the individual receives from those class members year after year. At the end of the class, when they're about to graduate, they have presentations. And what I hear every time is these individuals that I'm graduating with are individuals that hopefully I can continue to have relationships with for many years. I know personally, being a former graduate of the class of 2019 and 2020, was that I still interact with the individuals in my class frequently. I would have gotten a bank loan from one of them. One I've done programs with, and these are individuals that I'm very grateful to be able to have met in that situation. And really, the bonds that you make there are pretty substantial. So a fantastic program, and I'm looking forward to hopefully 40 more years of leadership Franklin County. And so I appreciate you asking. Did that answer your question?
Yes, yeah, no, that did, thank you.
Any other questions for Ryland? Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you, Jake.
Appreciate you all.
Director Landis, I think we're gonna pause, and I want to apologize to community partners. We're just gonna recess for a quick 5 minutes. We have a whole lot of agenda still before us, and so we're just gonna take a quick break and we will be right back. We'll say 5 minutes. That's okay. Community partner requests.
Thank you. We have the Franklin County Coalition to End Homelessness, and this is a new request for 2026.
Hello,
Howdy, howdy.
and if you want to tell us about your request.
Yeah,
and what
apologies ahead of time because I forget what we sent in compared to what I've got in front of me. So if anything, if for any reason there's a discrepancy, just call it out and I'll make sure to address it as best I can. We were asking for a total of $7,000. And just as it's listed up there, 2,000 would be direct client aid, like propane refills, food, blankets, things like that. And then 5,000 would be for a stipend for the services coordinator, which last year would have been me, but in the future could be, you know, anyone in that role. For the work that they do, especially coordinating through the shelter, coordinating volunteers, meals, and cleanup and tear down and everything. I'm not sure what else you would need to hear from me, but I'll be happy to field any questions if you have any.
Do we have any questions?
So I know it's kind of self-explanatory, but for the people listening that may not know, tell us a little bit about what the organization actually does, kind of a full gamut of, you know, treating the homeless and whatever else they may offer.
Sure thing. I guess I could have included it, but I just scrolled down to that point, so apologies. First I'll include our mission and then a small detail and then what we do in the shelter. Our mission is to build a future in Franklin County, Kansas, where homelessness is rare, brief, and non-reoccurring. And the coalition has transitioned a lot from busing folks to other shelters out of town to hotels and having a warming shelter. We have some documents that go back as far as 2012 when it was a fledgling organization, but we tell most people we've been around 6 or 7 years. But it's changed a lot in the meantime, or in that time frame. And then to answer the other part of your question, the cold weather shelter is what we do. Any night in the winter where it drops to 20 degrees or lower, we open up an emergency cold weather shelter. We invite people to come in and have a hot meal and a place to sleep. But it's only open overnight. Come morning time, we, you know, close the doors and clean up and wait for the next day. And then some of the supplies, it might make sense go directly to the shelter, like supplies that we keep there, like if we ever have to replace a cot or, you know, durable equipment that we keep there. And then some, like the propane tanks or anything that we allow our guests to take home would be things that they would just take back their sites, wherever they're staying. I don't know if that fully answered.
Sure. You know, it did. So you've mentioned opening up the doors. Where are the doors?
Sure. So for the last 2 years, and then we have an open agreement for this next year too, at the First Baptist Church. I think it's 410 South Hickory. We use their Elliott Hall. It's their big commons area. And then we're also able to use their kitchen, which is great because they have state certification that some kitchens don't. So we could actually prepare meals there when we don't have them brought in. Most are brought in by volunteers, but it's kind of a nice little perk.
Thank you.
And where do they go during the day once they're leave at?
Wherever they go.
Wherever they go.
Yeah, I wish I had a better answer, but yeah, a lot will end up anywhere that it's warm, that it's open. We have some people who will tell us that they will literally just meander through Walmart with something in a cart so that they'll fit their shopping. Some will end up at the library, some will end up at a friend's house who just can't house them overnight. Some just go back to their camp.
And I think the PD sometimes opens up their facility,
Yeah.
the entrance as well. I mean, maybe not as comfortable for some who maybe don't want to go to the police
Right,
department, but yeah.
No, but they do. They've opened up their lobby several times last year and it still offers a place out of the elements, a place to charge a phone, somewhere to just kick back. That's not a tent.
And the Baptist Church, they don't charge anything for this.
They don't.
Only volunteer
Yep.
work that they do.
And they do have a brand new, I think Reverend is her title. They just got a new head of church though. That's why I was saying, just in case anyone had heard that they've agreed that this following year, we can still use it before it, you know, anyone discusses a move of venue.
Okay. And I don't know, Franklin County Health, have you been to Franklin County?
We did, and we actually got nothing. We didn't get a super explicit answer, but a lot of the vibes were that our group helps Ottawa specifically and not necessarily the whole county. And that's the biggest
I
talking.
mean, Ottawa's in Franklin County.
County seat even, but we ended up getting nothing. We were expecting, if anything, to get a reduced number. You know, as they went through the discussion, because we saw they did that with some other groups, but we ended up getting a 0.
Brett, could you kind of hit on, especially for folks who don't know, where does the Coalition to End Homelessness kind of fit between, you mentioned Blessing Box, Elizabeth Lane Center, ECAN, Hope House, some of those kind of community partners that fulfill similar needs, kind of where does the coalition kind of fit into that puzzle?
Sure. I'll say the biggest thing is the cold weather shelter. That's the one thing that no one else does, that is a need that needs filled. You understand what I mean? And that's the one thing that makes us unique more than the other supplies that we offer. You are right, though. There are a lot of people who will hit up multiple organizations because they have needs and they don't know where to fill them, or, it doesn't get filled by one organization.
Well, I see a lot of churches in town do help support me, and I'm thinking get ahead of this on Hope House. I'm not sure that I'm reading ahead myself here. But as far as how many people then do you deal with on average? Night at the.
So our shelter, it ranged from as low as 3 people to as high as 13. And we think that we have between 20 and 30 unique individuals. Apologies, I've heard so many people talk about data. I'm not a data guy. I'm more of one of the bleeding hearts that just wants to sit down and chat. So I'm really bad with numbers. So a lot of these numbers I've had to have help compiling, but we were open 24 times just in the calendar 2025 year. Our first opening was actually on Thanksgiving 2024, but we didn't start tracking the volunteers per night until the new year. So 20 to 30 unique individuals, some multiple times, obviously, and we were open at least 24 times.
I guess I see United Way helped out in the past, right?
Yeah, I'd have to go down to our funding.
I saw this on the statement of activity.
Actually, unless I'm just looking at it wrong, we don't have United Way funding that we've gotten in the past 3 years, and that's what I had pulled up.
Oh, okay, all right. You see it.
We have been referred, people have been referred to the coalition and the warming shelter from the United Way. But monetarily, no.
While you're kind of on the financials, just as kind of a question, I guess anecdotally, maybe more if you don't have all the data, the disparity between looking at 2023, your revenues and expenditures were both significantly higher. You had 15K in revenue, 13K in expenses. That drops to 3,500 for revenue. Kind of what are revenue streams on that? Is that through the ministerial alliance and donations there? Is that private donations?
That's a good question. So I don't have some of that. I do know that in 2023, 2024, the coalition got money from the county, and that was $10,000. That's the single biggest line item difference that you're gonna see. And then we did not get that last year or this year. Others are individual contributions were significantly higher. We got over $5,400, 23, 24, where we barely cracked 2,000 the next 2 years. And then we did have a standalone fundraiser in 24, 25, and that raised almost $1,500. So it does look kind of like it's all over the place, I understand.
I guess there's no grant writing opportunities that you're.
There are now, so we're a registered nonprofit now.
Okay.
And we can pursue all sorts of things that we could not before. Because we ran into so many obstacles where we would start to pursue something and then it was like, oh, enter your EIN. We didn't have anything yet. So we don't have anything immediately.
Okay.
And I can't tell you, yes, we'll find $5,000, but yeah, the door is open now.
Brett, are you seeing the same individuals year after year? Is it, some come and go, or some actually get, their own housing and you don't see them anymore? And
Sure.
some others roll in?
There's not as much overlap as you might think. There have been some people, I know at least one guy who's been there 3 years in a row since I've been involved. And so he's been in and out of homelessness, though. It's not been a consistent thing. But if you're looking for a feel-good story, yes, we do have some that find housing and then are no longer in need of shelter. We just ran into, I wish I could make up names on the spot faster, but anyway, I ran into somebody when I was out at a job and he asked me for a ride home, and it caught me off guard because he asked for a ride home. And it was great because this is someone who I knew. There are levels of homelessness. There are people who are really close to getting into a house. There are people who are very far from finding housing. I did not imagine that he would be in an apartment. So it was fantastic news. And we've had many stories like that. We had another couple that were able to get into a trailer, and several others working on that path. But yes, we do have some that have overlapped year after year.
On your kind of expenses, talking about propane heaters and stuff, does First Baptist donate donate, the utilities to heat the space, light the space?
Yep.
Basically, everything that goes into that is kind of expenseless for you
Yes, and
guys.
it's phenomenal that they do that. Yeah, they also pay to heat some rooms when we needed additional rooms. They'll turn those on. But like I said, they've let us use their kitchen, they've let us use their space, they've let us use their tables, chairs, everything. And yes, that's all donated.
You charge for cell phones, I assume there, right?
Yeah, we got some chargers and bricks donated, but yeah, yep. All the used utilities, the electricity, the heat, the plumbing that they donate all that.
And shower facilities there, or?
Not yet, but they're actually pursuing a grant that would let them add a shower. I don't know the status of that, but I know that was pretty new news.
Very good. Any further questions for Brett?
On the kind of services, the stuff that you guys will be using a portion of this for, is that kind of simply something, someone submits a request to the board if they specifically need something, or is it more, does the board kind of say, we see a need, we'll buy and fill? Or kind of how does that procurement from you guys process typically work? Is that more,
Let me see if I understand you right. Like if somebody says, hey, I'm out of propane.
like, does someone call you, say, hey, I'm out of propane, or
Yeah.
my tent, or my sheets or pillow, or I need deodorant or toothpaste? Or do you guys typically kind of proactively reach out and say, hey, we have this, who needs?
Most of the guests that we house know about those services. And a lot of them are also clients at the Hope House, and they can relay the information through them. But a lot of it really is during the winter when they're a lot more communicative and get a hold of us, they literally will just say, hey, I'm out of propane, can you help me out? And so it's them reaching out on a case by case basis.
But we do keep documentation, sorry. We do keep a lot of documentation, so we're not just giving tents to the same person. Like there's
that's a good point,
a standard, like process, and there's like a time frame that they're supposed to keep that tent unless there's like a major flood or something like that. And then we have a partnership with the co-op, so they can take a voucher from Hope House, go get it filled, then the coalition gets the bill, pays that bill, and then we can kind of keep track of what clients is, how much they're using, how cold the winter was, based on how much cost gone up, things like that. So I do some of the financials for the coalition, so I know a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Hearing Tiffany say that out loud, it makes a lot more sense and answers your question better. I hope that's.
Yeah, no,
Sorry.
that's perfect, kind of from looking at a stipend for the president potentially, and then it's volunteers that if you're having to pick up a tank, go get it filled. And then also checking, I use, hundreds and hundreds of pounds of propane a year to heat as well. And I was like, Casey, if you're gonna fill it,
Well, we were trying to find
or
the
co-op.
way, we were
is
like, how can we do this?
certainly-
And so that's the easiest way for our clients, because a lot of them are in that area anyway.
Well, and they were cheaper even with no agreement, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Their retail price.
We're trying to do the most.
Okay.
that we can with what
And
we
even negotiated a little lower price than probably retail.
I think, because
Potentially,
we're like
okay.
we're a member of it, so
Yeah.
I'm hoping maybe.
I can't remember the
Okay.
numbers before and after, but I do think so.
Okay.
I know how much it is for 30 pounds.
Yeah.
I mean, you can tell me if it's a good rate or
Yeah,
not.
Okay, awesome. I think that. And then the coalition's president is just elected kind of by the board, for a 1-year term, 2-year term, kind of.
I think we put 3 in the we're actually working on drafting official bylaws now that we're actually a nonprofit. We got some help from a local attorney in drafting those up, and we need to finalize them. But we were looking at 3 years for a term.
Yeah. I know we'll have a lot of discussion coming forward, but with bylaws and stuff not being in place, I know personally, when it comes to finances, I would be more comfortable funding the heaters, refills, tangible goods than a person's time until bylaws are fully written that really define that, because that's just an area that's, when there's ambiguity, it's kind of hard sometimes with that. So as we're kind of discussing, that's just from my perspective, I would be more on the side of the service side and tangible
Yeah,
goods
absolutely.
than that, until some of that stuff really gets kind of built out and the organization has that framework.
Even with different reasoning, it's a lot easier to say, I put granola bars in the hands of someone who needs them. So I fully understand. That's fine.
But we fully appreciate, volunteering on a lot of boards, it's a lot of time. And
Yeah.
yours, working overnight at the shelter, whoever serves that role, you know, it's a lot working at an all-night shelter, and so
It
I
has.
don't want that to be lost on.
And volunteers were a near bottleneck several nights actually, because you're asking someone to put in 12 to 14 overnight hours on a cold night already, where they might have something. But anyway,
Yeah.
you get it. Yeah, it's a big ask, but we had people come through every time last year.
Awesome.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
I appreciate the time. Thank you.
you.
I'm frozen.
It went on recess.
Yep.
There we go. All right, our next applicant is the Hope House for $9,549.12, a very specific amount.
Yeah.
I know that. Yeah, I had to double check it. I'm like, I like that, but what is it?
So, Hope House is a food and clothing pantry here. We've been here about 35 years. We were formed, under like the idea that, churches could donate to a place and then we would be able to help the citizens of Franklin County and Ottawa specifically. And that way they weren't gonna get duplicated services, because it's easy to go to one church and say, oh, I need this, and I need this, and I need this, and collect a lot of things from a lot of places. So what Hope House does is we offer some financial support for rent, utilities, sometimes to get people to get to work, with get fuel vouchers. We've partnership with the Homeless Coalition and we help clients get tents and propane and things like that. But our specific ask today is to purchase food that would benefit on average 203 families. We're asking specifically for the purchase of ground turkey and peanut butter. I don't know if you're aware, but the federal TFAP nutrition program was cut this March. 40,000 cases of meat, dairy, eggs, and dried fruit had been canceled. That's about 30% of TFAP's. It's specifically the Corporate Commodity Corporation portion of that program. TFAP is the Temporary Emergency Food Assistance Program, and we do get a lot of our food from harvesters. So, so that's a federal level program that was cut. Another program that was cut is the Kansas Food Bank program. It's a state level program. $369,000 of that program has been cut. That program actually ends June 30th, and it's completely cut from the 2026 budget. We specifically asked for these two items from the city. We went to the county and requested $13,011 worth of different food items, and the county basically said, we don't want to start another line item on the budget for an organization that doesn't already ask us for money, and so they awarded us $0. So if you have any questions, ask Hopper.
I, for one, really appreciate, I know it was kind of said jokingly before, but the exact number, but knowing exactly where money would go to. And I know we have general ideas from the other budgets, but to know, okay, we're for sure making an impact by, ground turkey and peanut butter. And, so I just wanted to say, I appreciate those, very specific numbers and knowing exactly how our money would help and be utilized. I appreciate that.
Okay, and one other data that I have is in Ottawa, we last year in 2024 served unduplicated households, 560 households, and unduplicated individuals, 1,598 individuals just in this zip code. So that's not including Franklin County as a whole, that's just Ottawa. Any questions?
So yeah, about 3/4 of your customers are basically Ottawa residents, look like, right? So
Yes.
2,059. What about other counties? Do other counties come in? You have someone from Miami County comes in and asks for food?
So, the way that Hope House operates is, it's just countywide. So, TFAP is a government program and it's done county by county. And so because of that, and we participate in TFAP, we only serve Franklin County residents. I mean, there might be an instance where we've let somebody from Garnett get food once or twice, but they're supposed to get food in their specific county based on the TFAP. Some counties don't offer TFAP, and so that's where it can get a little bit, but we kind of have a strict policy that you have to have a Franklin County address.
Okay. And I do see a lot of churches contribute to your budget.
Yes,
I
about
see that.
25% of our revenue donations are from churches and about 75% comes from individuals.
Okay.
Okay, that's great. I like that. Then, like you said, if somebody goes to a church, gets food and do this one, they kind of, money for utilities and they kind of, that's hard for the churches to turn people away, but if they have one place to send them like you.
Right.
I think that's ideal.
We do keep a lot of data on what services we provide clients and how often, and we have a lot of regulations for the services we provide. So that we can kind of keep track of things like that. So like showers and like, we know the numbers.
Okay, and then blessing boxes is a total separate thing.
Mhm.
So, okay, another question in there, but. Oh, yeah, of course, grant writing, again, that's another thing, since are you set up as a nonprofit, right?
Yes, we have applied for grants in the past. Sometimes we get them, sometimes we don't. We do get a lot of support from some of the, like, we've had banks and things like that support us in the past, AE and we get things through that, Starbucks, I think once, so we do get as much as we can try to put in. We are, employed by 2 part-time employees, so we do what we can with what we can. So we work 16 hours, well, it just went up to 20, but in 2024, we work 16 hours each and we try to get done as much as we can.
I see Walmart donates a lot of food too, it looks like.
Yes, so we have a partnership with the DC, and so anything damaged from stuff.
All right, good. That's what I was wondering. Good, I like that.
Thank you for mentioning the hours too. I was
Sorry.
definitely shocked reading through that, between, yourself and Michelle Graff are 16 hours a week. I assumed previously that you both were just full-time, employees and just, so, again, just a shout out for the limited amount of time that you're able to put in, that you're compensated for at least. That's great. On the revenue, I was just curious, what's the Parker rental? Is that a home
Okay.
that you guys rent out?
No, so the back portion of the new building that we purchased was being used as a space for, I think it's called something else. It was Parker Hannafin, but I can't remember what it's called now. We call it Parker. So they store air filter supplies in there. And so they have a space in the industrial park or somewhere else in Ottawa. And so it's a storage. So we use that, to pour back into what so we do rent that space. And we do pay a lot of taxes on it.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you next, I see on real estate tax, it looks like that 26,000 a year. Wow.
And so one of the years when I very first started, it was my very first day, we were supposed to be at court. And I was the one that's supposed to be at court, so I didn't know about it. But somebody from the city helped us get the nonprofit portion lowered, but the rental portion is still pretty high for property taxes.
And I see your utilities, 14,000, so I assume natural gas besides city utilities?
Yes, we do have gas
And then harvesters, I know, so they used to come to the old ORC building over here, they still come once a week, or do they?
Twice a month.
Twice a month, okay. I remember I drove by there one time and saw a long line of people there, and I didn't realize what it was till the truck pulled out. Oh, wow. And that made sense, so I guess there is a source that direction, but that's twice a month, you said, right? And Fretza, is that the state thing?
Fretza is an organization that is under the umbrella of Hope House, but it's not a part of Hope House. So the financials just come through because we use QuickBooks, and so it's cheaper than trying to have every organization have QuickBooks. And so Fretza is a different organization, but the money is under the umbrella of, so it's completely separate, but it's Franklin Emergency Shelter.
Transition Shelter Association.
Okay.
It's got a lot of letters in it. I'm not on that board.
Sorry. And then the fact that you've moved to 17th Street from where you once were, I mean, obviously that's a whole lot nicer, bigger facility. I've been in the chamber copies and seen that space.
When I started 3 years ago, we were serving, the most we served was 175 households, and some months were up to 350. So we've doubled, we're able to have just people come in, sit in the lobby, cool off. It's been a blessing. We've been able to extend our hours. We have Thursday evening hours, which is really, really a nice thing because a lot of the working that also need assistance with food and things like that are able to come in because it's an evening, and we're looking to expand our hours maybe to another night. It's just hard with sports and things like that, but we're hoping to be able to expand to see more of our citizens be able to have access to food. We do about 4 days worth of food a month. So a client comes in, they get about 4 days worth of food. That's what we're able to provide. per individual in the house.
And so again, just kind of on your ask, it is a 16-ounce jar of peanut butter per household, so 12 per household, one per month, a pound of ground turkey per household for the 203 average for a year.
So it's not 100% assistance, but it's.
It'll help a ton.
Yep.
Because protein is the first thing that gets cut from harvesters, and peanut butter is the protein source, and ground turkey is the cheapest way to get another protein source.
Yeah.
I've done some substitute teaching. I know at certain grade schools, some of them have a sack of food for the kids to take home for the weekend. Is that part of your program?
No, I helped with that once. That's through Harvesters also. It's like the backpack program, and they do it on Fridays. The kids take it home and then they bring it back over the weekend. And the Baptist church, Baptist church does a lot. They usually get it coordinated, and then volunteers take it to the individual schools. And it's a really, really good program.
And do you know by chance, you may not, I was gonna try to look up food insecurity ratio rate for Ottawa, Kansas? I know I had in another.
I don't know
place
the
seen
number.
that. Either way, I will
Yeah.
say the number of individuals with food insecurity was frankly shocking. Yeah. And I know previously with, the library providing snacks after school, and how many kids you find out leave school, don't eat until they come back to school in the morning and have breakfast at the school. And I don't know, it's hard. Food and kids, it's definitely a tough situation. And I think, when it comes to ask, like, this is an extremely fair ask. And I appreciate that it's truly tangible, something that's going to those people and serving, like you said, peanut butter as an option to get some protein and some calories, and ground turkey as well, I think are great. So.
Any other questions? Thank you very
Thank
much
you
for
for
your
letting me
presentation.
share.
Thank you.
We
And
have one
finally,
more
thank you
organization.
for being patient. It's been a long time, we know.
I just want to start off by saying thank you guys for having me here today. I know you will have a lot of questions because there was like pretty much nothing in the information packets because this is a very new program. But I will just start by explaining what a child advocacy center is. So a child advocacy center is a space where children that have been physically abused, sexually abused, they experience neglect, witnessed a violent crime, they come to do a forensic interview. So it is a team approach with all the important team members that are a part of the investigation. So we have law enforcement, DCF, medical, county attorney's office, mental health, school district, anyone and everyone you can think of at the table for these services. And so how it works is a child discloses abuse, it goes to law enforcement, DCF, whoever receives it first, and then that law enforcement officer, DCF individual will reach out to our agency. So at that time, I'll be the executive director, forensic interviewer. So at that time, I would be organizing the family and the team being there at the same time. So the team comes 30 minutes early and we kind of just talk about what questions they want me to ask, what information is going to be important. And then from there, the family arrives. When it is time for the interview, I take the child into a separate room where there's a camera and a camera and recording, and the team members are in a separate room. So we have law enforcement, whoever the law enforcement agency is, whoever the DCF assessment worker is, county attorney's office, and they're all in a separate room watching this interview happen. So the whole purpose is to bring all of these resources together in one place for the child that's experienced this abuse. And then also not only bring all the services together, but have a trauma-informed view of this so that our children aren't reliving this trauma over and over again and going to the law enforcement and disclosing this horrific trauma. And then, oh wait, now you have to talk to DCF because DCF needs to know what happened. And then now that the case is potentially going to court, you have to talk to the county attorney's office and give more information. And this model is a family focused, child focused model, but of course there are benefits to it as well, right? hopefully we have better outcomes with prosecution and we're taking these perpetrators off the street. And this is a resource that Franklin County doesn't have. We have a CAC, our neighboring agencies have one in Lawrence, there's one in Topeka, there's one in Johnson County, but we do not have a resource like this in Franklin County. So what's happening now is we have different agencies, they have forensic interviewers, like Ottawa Police Department does have forensic interviewers. And what's happening is they're just being interviewed at different places instead of that centrally located place. And even though all of these team members are doing the best they can to provide resources and stuff, there's not a centrally located place where they also receive all of those resources, like mental health. We are in the process of potentially applying for funding through the Children's Advocacy Centers of Kansas. They have a grant to help support a clinician. So that's something that we're looking into. We're looking into other funding sources and a lot going on. So we had our first meeting, our stakeholders meeting on June 2nd. We had almost 30 people attend, and those people included all of the key members of that meeting. So we had every law enforcement agency in Franklin County there. We had every school district, if not, we were missing one. Every county attorney's office was there. DCF was there. Elizabeth Layton Center was there. We had Advent Health, Children's Mercy, anyone and everyone that is going to be touching the lives of these children to make sure that they're getting the resources that they need. And so, like I said, I know I gave very little information because this is very new. I started this like a month ago and we are already very, 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 very far. I've applied for my EIN since then, the 501c3. I have been doing anything and everything, all voluntary on my time. And so, of course, my ask today is for support to open up this CAC, but then also there is an opportunity for a rental space on Main Street that would be perfect for our location. And our agency would be the first ones up for that, but we would need help funding the source of the place. Positives of it is that it'll bring more beauty and good things to Franklin County, to Ottawa specifically. Of course, this isn't going to be open to the community all the time, but our goal is to not only be providing services to these family and children, but also to the community of Ottawa as well. Whenever I know I participated in the Prairie Paws scavenger hunt, that's something that we can be a part of. We can welcome people into our agency and say, hey, this is where children sometimes go. How can you help us? How can you support us? We have a huge gala that I have planned for November. We're going to have a national speaker coming and talking about the abuse that she's experienced and how a child advocacy center got her to where she is today. This is in the long run going to support our children, give them the resources they need to work past that trauma and then be better citizens and community members in Franklin County, but specifically, like I said, Ottawa. And as we know, Franklin County as a whole is who we would be serving, but Ottawa is the biggest city, right? So a majority of those cases are going to be Ottawa cases. With this location on Main Street, it's 101 Main Street, so it used to be 101 Salon. Somebody went in there that's renting it right now and they were gonna make it into a kitchen. A restaurant. They're not doing that, so they're looking to sublease it / we would take over the lease if it worked out. And if it's not us, the next runner up is a laundromat that they're looking to put in there. So of course, good resources for other people as well, but I have big plans. I mean, I will come in with, if we can get this funding / even maybe more funding than what I requested. I know it's a big ask, but I would be putting in not only time for the children and families in our community, but also bringing life down back into Main Street. And if you invest in this program, you're investing in me as well. And I am going to invest in Ottawa. I have big plans for, what this consists of. So, sorry, a lot of talking. But what questions do you have?
I read somewhere, I guess maybe I'm reading it now, that the grant is contingent upon getting other funding like this, right? Right?
Yes, so actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I did get awarded $40,000 through the Kansas Child Advocacy Center grant. So they will not help me fund a rental space. So that's where when I applied for the grant through you guys or the funding through you guys, I had a different kind of vision with it. But now more than ever, I need this funding to be able to secure this location on Main Street, to be able to provide the services. So I didn't get the full grant that I requested. I got $40,000, but I would say for my first grant request, I will take what I can get, and that is pretty awesome. So I did get that. I have a long list of other funding sources that I'm going to be also asking from. Of course, we all know it depends on time of the year and when it's open, but there are a lot of different funding sources. Franklin County is something that I will eventually come to. I haven't been able to do that yet because I came in a little bit late to the game. But I will be requesting funds. I will be requesting from Wellsville and other places as well. So I have spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours voluntarily. I'm getting paid $0 for this right now until we get started up because I'm so passionate about it. But I have looked into any and every single funding source for Franklin County, Kansas, government, like big picture funding sources. So.
Do you do something else full-time then?
Nope.
This is it.
No, I was working, so, I've worked for the last 12 years in domestic violence, sexual violence, and then also child advocacy center, so children. And I was working at the local domestic violence agency in Johnson County for a while, and then I was just ready to, I grew up in Ottawa. I've seen firsthand, you know, the lack of resources, although we're doing great and we're trying, they're not there, and we owe our children more than what we're giving them. And I'm here to make that happen. And I just need the faith from you guys and from the county and from my community partners to trust that this will be what I envision it and hopefully what we need.
I definitely appreciate how passionate you are about it. And I know, you know, when we're at events and we hear, you know, for example, the director of CASA speak about how many kids they serve, it's always shocking. It's always surprising how many people need those types of services in our area. So I definitely appreciate what you do.
The same, I'm sorry, I was unable to make kind of your kickoff event that,
That's,
you know,
there'll be plenty.
there was so much about, you know, but thank you for providing your information today. And then, you know, previously when we had met, for this space downtown, you know, you had mentioned kind of on the interviews, you know, a lot of that is like either at like the police station or, you know, at law enforcement kind of controlled facilities. What would your space, you know,
Yeah.
if you got funding to get 101?
Yeah.
What would that kind of look like in that space?
Yeah,
day to
absolutely.
day?
Yeah, so kind of hard, it's kind of hard to imagine, but how it would look is there is 2 office spaces there right now. So one of those spaces we would turn into the interview room. So that would be the space that me and the child go into with the recording system and the videos, and I would talk to them. So I'd make that room. There's a second office that I haven't fully decided. Either that would be the family waiting room, or I would use some open space at the front of the building for that. And then there is a conference room as well. So the conference room would be where the team meets. We have other meetings potentially in there, and the team would be meeting in there, watching the interview happen. I would not have an office right now because I'm willing to make that sacrifice. So my vision is that my office space would just be in this open area in the front of the space, because when we're not doing interviews, we won't be having a lot of traffic in and out. So I can have that privacy and all of that. And honestly, my vision and my goal is to figure out how we can make this work for the children. And if that means that I don't have a space of my own, that's okay. And then there's another space that doesn't have a door yet, but we could look into like putting a door in there. So potentially 3 different spaces, one for the interview, one for the family. Eventually, big term or like long term, I would love to have an in-house therapist. These funds that the Kansas Child Advocacy Centers providing would provide an in-house therapist specific to the Child Advocacy Center. That's a little further down the road because that's a lot to figure out. But then eventually we will eventually grow out of this space, right? Eventually 2-3 years from now, we're going to be in a bigger space where we can even potentially offer medical exams. I've worked at child advocacy centers before where everything is there. So they have the interviews, the mental health clinicians, they have actual medical facilities, and they have like Children's Mercy that comes down twice a month maybe to do those exams if they're not acute and needing to be done right away. But this funding for therapists through the state of Children's Advocacy Center is also focused on problematic sexual behaviors. So not only would that grant money be supporting children that have come through our services that have been victims, that grant money would also be providing therapy for older siblings that are having sexualized behaviors towards the children. Which catching it early so that we can prevent that from happening in the future when they're adults. So that's something else that's gonna help our community too, right? Because we're gonna be providing those services where children that are right now perpetrating, which we know, why are children perpetrating? There's reasons for that. Interviewing those children and then giving them the services that they need to be able to change the way that their trajectory is going.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
So we're discussing our 2026 budget, so these funds wouldn't be available if we approved until next year. Is that, original leasing, willing to set on that property vacant for 6 months for you?
That's a great question. I don't know that answer, but I do have I'm always thinking, my brain is always spinning. So I do have other possibilities that I could look into. I could reach out to other community partners. I've gotten $1,500 of donations, just like, regular money that people have been donating. So that right there is super helpful. But on top of that, I know it's still a little ways down the road as well, but this gala that I have planned for the fall is going to be huge. The Lincoln Event Center donated their space for us. It's going to be great. So yes, that would be, of course, figuring out how to make it from potentially July 1 to January 1st, right? Is that correct? But I would figure it out. Absolutely.
And then you mentioned, the county as a potential partner. Have you had discussions with them about funding?
Not yet, because I was kind of late to the game. So their funding opened up like a month or two before I officially started to really take off with things. So not yet, but of course, absolutely, I would be reaching out and having the same conversation with them.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that $40,000 that I'm getting from the Child Advocacy Centers of Kansas grant, or not that, sorry, the CAC grant through the Kansas Grant Governor's Grant Program. There is always a potential that even though they are telling me right now that they're not going to pay for my space to be leased, that I could ask for a few months with the idea that there's going to be another funding source for that location. So that's something, and that funding starts July 1. So that's an option.
And you've applied for an EIN, I assume?
Yep, EIN, nonprofit, all of that's the EIN is official, the nonprofit status is still in the works, but I did do the easy step, so it's only 2 to 4 weeks, and it's been like 2 weeks now, so hoping to have that sooner than later.
And on this is your plan, long-term plan, but also kind of soon, are you looking to have a board of directors, have someone, if you're
Yes.
more of an executive director or whatever position that may
Absolutely.
be?
Yep.
Some board, some other kind of governing body.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as a 501(c)(3), you have to have a board of directors. So I'm already working on that. I have 2 actually confirmed and then 3 potentially in the works that they're just doing a few different kind of things to figure it out. So ideally, we will have a board of 7 community members that are really beneficial to the mission, to the agency. So I'm hoping to secure some more board members and have our first unofficial board meeting just to talk about everything come July. And I have something else that you guys should know is I have a lot of support from the Children's Advocacy Centers of Kansas. So they're the umbrella agency for child advocacy centers in Kansas. And whenever I pay my dues to be a part of their agents, like the dues for the agency, they're providing me with anything and everything, really. My gosh, I just lost the words. Any paperwork that I need for policies, procedures, anything along those lines. So I'm not starting from zero. I would be starting with that support, and they have been phenomenal. They allowed me to use them as my fiscal agent to receive the $40,000 through the state, so that we could get this started. So a lot of support behind that.
with CAC is kind of, you mentioned around the state, is there any type of licensing, any specific certification, something that, you know, essentially says that you or this organization is qualified
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
kind of provide this service?
Yeah, great question. So, forensic interviewers they go to a week-long training that teaches them about how to ask questions, how to not be, leading, because it's a non-leading investigation, right? We're not trying to give them answers, we're just trying to get the information. So a week-long training for that, but then also all CACs are accredited through National Children's Alliance, so it's a national agency. So the step would be starting the CAC, officially joining the Children's Advocacy Centers of Kansas membership, even though they're helping me without that right now. And then after that, joining the NCA, the National Children's Alliance, membership, and then from there accrediting for those services. We can still provide the services, so once we have the space and I have the training, which I'm hoping to get done in July, we can start services. We can start providing services to children in Franklin County, Ottawa, that are experiencing these things. So, I feel very confident because I've done all the legwork to get me here right now, and it's only been like a month. So that just shows, you know, if we can just work together and get it up and running, we'll do great. And I have good ideas for how beautiful I can make the space look out, inside and out, which helps downtown Ottawa as well.
On this, as you had mentioned, you know, kind of doing these interviews, is that part of the, like, Franklin County attorneys in the legal proceeding as well? Or is this much more like outside of the legal realm, support based kind of the therapy stuff on that side?
So I'll answer the question, and if I'm not answering it, we can go back. So it would be, I mean, the forensic interviews that I would be doing with the children, they would be going to trial, and I would have to be testifying to what questions I'm asking, how I'm going along with these questions, and that training that I will take in July, that will give me all of the information I need. And my plan is that if I am working actually with, the Lawrence CAC right now, and their interviewer has given me permission to attend testifying hearings with her, to sit in on interviews that she is performing. And then after I get my license, well, not license, I don't know if it's really a license, but once I get my training, I'm going to have people peer reviewing me, watching me provide these interviews. So it's not just one day I'll just get trained and be interviewing. It'll be a step, like quite a few steps to make sure that I'm providing the best interview, so that when it comes to trial, if it comes to trial, it's standing solid for that trial, for that child.
Other cities our size have this similar situation, will you let me know about that?
A CAC, you mean a Child Advocacy Center? Yeah, so actually, one just opened in the fall in Rice County, which is even smaller than us, and so very rural. And they're already through the roof with interviews that they're conducting. They have some other funding sources that I'm gonna be applying for. I've been working very closely with them. So that's kind of comparable. We are a bigger county than Rice County. But that, really our biggest need for CACs in Kansas is rural communities, and we have none. We have none in rural communities except for now a couple. Like Western Kansas actually has mobile units, and they go out to different counties and, provide those resources. And that's something that National Children's Alliance as a whole is looking to, figure out, is how do we get more rural areas with CAC so that children are getting best practice.
Well, thank you for asking a question. So you kind of broke all of mine up. It wasn't just me for 10 minutes. Do you know, because I know you had, you know, on your stuff, the population served, obviously you haven't yet served
Of
anyone.
course, yep.
Do you have from, you know, cases, at least specifically, not even getting into the numbers that may not have current legal proceedings going on, the number of children that would kind of be in this program, you say a year from now, if everything worked out?
That's a really great question. So I did have some information. So I got some information from DCF. They have like their public numbers from the different years. So between 2020 and 2025, so that's 5 years, there were, in Franklin County specific, there were 4,018 reports of suspected child abuse or neglect made to DCF. And then out of those just reports, 2,156 of those reports were assigned to an assessment worker. So of course, it's gonna be, there's a lot to like figure out as we go along, but best practice, best case scenario is that if there is a report of, let's say, sexual abuse, that, and then it's given an assessment worker, that assessment worker is reaching out to us and we're doing that interview. So best case scenario, throughout those 5 years, if we would have been here, those 2,156 kids potentially could have been interviewed. But then on top of that, in those 5 years, 184 children, just that many children were removed from their homes due to neglect, physical abuse, sexual abuse, whatever, domestic violence in the home. So within that 5 year time gap, 104 kids just in Franklin County were removed and placed somewhere else. So that's something kind of to give you a little bit, I would say.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you. No, that definitely helps kind of put at least a.
And Chief
Perspective.
Weingarter has been a part of this whole thing as well, so you know, he has some numbers too, probably. What else? Any other questions,
other
thoughts,
questions?
concerns? Any like burning questions that you're?
I think we're good. I think you've answered them.
Awesome.
Thank you very
I
much.
appreciate it.
Thank you for sitting here for. 3
Yeah.
hours.
Good day.
It's.
What better to do on a
That
Tuesday?
is almost a 3 hours. Wednesday.
Wednesday.
You're saying, did we go back in time?
I don't know what day it is anymore. I need a snack.
It'll be Thursday if we're here a little longer.
Yep, I need a snack. Okay.
As we said at the beginning, this was a great chance for you to just gather the information from all the applicants and that the recommendation is to revisit this with more conversation about how it could be funded and what you're looking to do with these requests at our next meeting.
Yeah.
Or if we find kind of reading through stuff or thinking through, if we have questions for a specific partner, we just kind of want to get that to you and then you would either get the info or potentially invite them back, just so we don't have everyone again, kind of how that.
Yes,
would
if you
look.
could send them, actually, yes, you could send them directly to myself or Melissa and we will gather those, either get the information or invite them back and then go from there.
Okay.
And then make sure that everyone has the same
Yeah.
information. Yes.
Thank you.
I think we're good. Thank you. We'll move on to item 11C.
Review of the 2026 operating budget for special revenues.
The proposed 2026 operating budgets for the special parks and special highways funds will be presented for discussion and consensus. And we have Director Landis back.
I'm back. Just gonna apologize for my stomach growling.
That's
Sorry. So similar to the way that we've reviewed the other budgets in the previous couple of weeks, we have a very similar slide deck prepared for you. These are also two funds that if you do have questions and we want to carry over conversation, we certainly could. We could lightly touch today and then bring them back at a later time if you want to do that as well. The special streets, the purpose of this fund, and actually, Director Walsh is here too, for both of these funds.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what that director was.
These are yours. This is a special revenue fund and it is used to support our street preservation program, construction infrastructure upgrades within the city. There are three specific fuel, revenue sources that include fuel tax, federal funds exchange dollars, which is a reimbursement, and then, the highway connecting links dollars that you moved from the general fund to the special streets fund, starting last year. This is our financial summary and the overview, and you'll, notice just a couple of things here where you, that the revenue stream is pretty flat because again, those resources or those revenue streams are a pretty flat source of revenue coming in. The federal funds exchange dollars are based on reimbursable costs through a state-run program that uses federal funds to reimburse the cities for costs that have occurred in the past. So they are not funds that you collect up front and then spend. You have to have actually spent those dollars to get reimbursed. And then the fuel tax, of course, is based on, it's a pretty flat revenue stream that comes in, largely based on population and a calculation that's done through the state and is dispersed from them directly. And so the part of this financial summary that's really changing from here going forward is the street preservation plan or the pavement plan. And that was included in your budget. And that's the current plan. In your documentation, there was something that we put together. It just shows every year from 25 through 30 to show you what those streets might be and what those estimated costs might be for improvements to those streets. The transfers, of course, we'll talk about the debt, so the debt service here in just a couple of slides. Otherwise, those are pretty static expenditures, maybe related to engineering or some other costs related to just street project planning.
Did you say what the contractual services was? Did you just say what that was specifically? Sorry.
9th to 13th design, is that it?
Yeah, so under contractual services, it is, there is a little bit of funding in there for engineering for some of the projects that are planned, and then the remainder of that is the street
Oh, okay. The
plan,
Yeah.
the pavement plan.
And also, a small portion of that would be like the striping around town. That'd be another one of the contractual services that we would see in or buy in.
And I think as a reminder, you know, we talked about this a couple of times. This fund really doesn't have enough dollars in it to do some of your really large street replacement projects. These are maintenance projects. These are the ones that he's brought to you to talk about the need to preserve those streets so that they will last longer before a large repair or replacement needs to happen. And so that, as we ramp those up, actually, you'll be able to kind of see here as those expenditures start to ramp up in 25, 26 and beyond, that's where you start seeing a declining fund balance overall, because we're now then meeting or exceeding what those revenue streams are for each of those annuals.
See that nasty green, gray line again.
Yes, that's our estimated fund balance. So that's one of the big points we wanted to make, is that this does get us through our plan through 2030. It does not really extend beyond there, because then what you have is you're basically spending everything that you would be bringing in that year plus any fund balance that's available. So then every plan beyond that will be limited to the dollars that you bring in revenue in that same year. So if that makes sense, it's not that the program will be eliminated. It's that you'll be limited to the amount of revenue you bring in. And then also at the timing of bringing in that revenue. So we want to, as we work towards those out years, we'll want to massage that a little bit to make sure that there's enough money flowing from year to year to get started on those projects before the revenues come in that same year.
Director Welsh, on this year with the street striping and the dust control. Do you know what the difference is? I'm assuming, is that just typically what they do? You'll see it on county roads, that the oil that's sprayed down to just.
Yes, so we still have just very, very few, maybe 4 or 5 different gravel roads in town, and it would be the dust control on each one of those, but it's exactly like what you see on the county roads.
Do you know roughly what that portion of, because it's kind of combined with the striping, is? In terms of what would the additional be to potentially even just like chip and seal them maybe one time and then not have to do it? Is that
Have that number off the top of my head, but yes, the dust control that is proposed here is about $25,000 for those 5 roads.
Okay.
Obviously, chip and seal is gonna be a larger expense than that, but. And if we were able to chip and seal, yes, then we would eliminate the dust control need.
Were those gravel roads part of the entire road inventory that we got? Gravel roads were not a part of that.
Brick roads and gravel roads were not a part of the last assessment. And some of the gravel roads, one of them, specifically would be the one that runs East Wilson. So as you go out further that direction, just to chip and seal,
you would just be throwing money down.
Yeah, that's a lot,
That
yeah.
needs a different type of address than a Jacobs.
Yeah. Especially with the large trucks that I'm
Yes.
sure go out to use those recycling.
Yes. Yeah.
Our capital improvements were prepared using our strategic pillars, as we've discussed in the past. If you look at the capital line item in the financial summary, these two projects are reflected there. Just the design of the reconstruction of Cedar Street from 9th to 13th and the reconstruction of Main and 23rd Street South. This would be more of a grant match for any potential funding that would be coming in through KDOT or any additional funding source. And that has not really been designed yet, so.
Yeah, so the numbers that you see here would just be like a preliminary report, and then the year further, 2027, we have numbers in there for an actual design. To be able to do construction on each one of these pieces.
Thank you, we should have noted that.
On that, do you know how far south, because now that city limits is even further south there, kind of just to the interstate, or do you know how far south it's really?
23rd strip, yeah, that's a good question. So 23rd south, the part that we're talking about doesn't even quite reach the interstate.
Yeah.
It would be closer towards like the on-ramp.
Yeah.
Or the off-ramp and the on-ramp on the other side. So it's just that, it's a very small area, but really need address.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this would include basically any repairs to the median would be a part of the roadway
Yes.
project. Okay.
The budget highlights that are here is basically everything we just discussed. So there really isn't a lot coming out of here with the exception of that new pavement preservation program that's been put in place. And these, couple of specific items. There is one outstanding debt, issuance that comes out of here, and this does mature in 2030. The annual payments are roughly $88,000. We transfer those dollars to the debt service fund. This was for the original street sidewalk improvements along main traffic ways throughout the city. And I don't have a list of exactly where those funds were spent.
Director Landis, one question. I know, as you said, we just implemented the pavement preservation plan, PPP. You kind of explain how that differs from a CIP road project, kind of in terms of either scope or funding, or kind of how those are different. Will we have to move things from pavement preservation to CIP if they're a certain scale, or kind of longer term what that looks like?
So we're not really planning to move them from that plan over to the CIP largely because these are maintenance type projects. And however, it will work largely like the CIP in that they could be moved based on priority. Things happen where it needs immediate attention as opposed to maybe being able to live in the longer term plan. My vision would be that it does not come into the CIP, that it just lives as part of this fund. We could attach even that plan to our CIP if we wanted to list the street maintenance or street pavement preservation plan in our CIP, which we don't have it in there right now, just because it's more of a maintenance project and not a reconstruction process.
Okay, thank you.
I think along with that, I think one of the biggest concerns Director Welch had with putting the information in the packet even was if someone were to see, hey, my street is on there and it's going to get repaired or this year or next year, this does have the potential to change based on the bids annually for doing that project. And it's based on all of the streets that are included in there for each year annually. So again, something might become a priority where it has to be moved around. So this is not a set in stone plan. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a very good reference guidance that we're going to use, but yes. I was hesitant to put that out there just because I don't want somebody saying, oh, my street's gonna get fixed in 2027 and 2027 gets here, but we have, a huge sinkhole on a different street that needed to be repaired. So something has to get, there's only X amount of dollars to go around.
With that plan, does that also take in, is there kind of a scale where it's grading, obviously condition, but is there anything with traffic count? Where a road that has a higher traffic count, but potentially a better score may average out to be done before a street that may not have as much traffic but has a lower score, or anything kind of with that?
So we don't necessarily have. We're adding back. Yes, yes. We don't necessarily have that traffic count right now, but we took a lot of the consideration into what the roads were based on their location, right? So the main roads that are taking you to business, to hospital, to schools, that type of thing. Those were kind of the primary focus originally, and then we've kind of outsourced to look and see what roads need to be addressed before we just completely lose them. So, but we don't have a traffic count necessarily to base all of that assessment on.
And we have correct me if I'm wrong, a few years ago, we got something that shows the main thoroughfares, your secondary arterials and all of that. Okay.
Yeah.
If you have questions, we are happy to answer any more of those questions. Otherwise, we can move on to special parks. Again, this is one of those funds that it is a special revenue fund. If you kind of have the consensus, we'll move ahead with putting it into our overall budget document. We're happy to answer questions or bring anything back to you that you want, but we didn't have anything major beyond this point.
We good, moving on? Yep.
Okay, special parks is our next fund, and this is a dedicated purpose fund for larger projects for your city parks. This is not where you would pay for some of those operational costs. Those come from the general fund. I should have mentioned that about the special streets fund as well. Those are not operational type costs where you would consider personnel and those types of expenditures. So a lot of times you see this being used as the other part that it's not just a grant match, but it's maybe the other half of what you didn't have funding for. Maybe it accompanies donations or it accompanies some other funding source to be able to put in some of your larger projects. I apologize, the revenue sources for this are a third of the liquor tax and the park development fees. So we do charge for every development that goes in. If it does not have a structured park space within it, then each one of the parcels or each one of the homes built pay a park fee, and those park fees do get deposited to this fund. The third of the liquor tax is by statute as a city of the second class, we have to put a third of the liquor tax into special parks, the general fund, and our special alcohol fund. So that's where that's derived from, and that is a direct payment from the state. So we don't control how much or when that comes to us. This is our financial summary for special parks. There really are not a large number of moving parts and pieces unless you have a specific project that you're paying for. And going forward, we really don't have anything in our capital improvement plan that is slated for a specific year. There is a laundry list of projects that could be done, and really just trying to give this fund a chance to build up some of those revenues and apply for grants and see what is available to us, and know that we can move ahead with any of those projects that are sitting out there and ready to go, should those funds become available. So this is one of those funds where you're not gonna have a consistent expenditure line because it's based on projects. So, and when those projects get accomplished, and so that fund balance does begin to build, but largely because we don't have anything planned specifically yet for those dollars over the next couple
So
of
you like
years.
this one a lot better?
You like that one?
You like it this time.
Save that one for last. Yeah. Appreciate that.
We did sell a few of the lots that the city owned in Lakeside a couple of years ago, and so those dollars are basically reserved aside in here for improvements at that space. I believe it was for trail or other improvements, and so we made sure we set those dollars aside, but they do live within that fund balance in this fund. Again, no capital improvement projects in the CIP listed specifically yet. This, like we just talked about, in 2026, one of the highlights is that we are planning to use those KDHE grant match dollars for picnic tables and benches, and then they'll continue to use those dollars year over year for whatever they can apply for and get awarded for each of those years. Is that fair?
At least for the next 3 years, we plan to replace picnic tables and benches. We've done this for several years at this point. If you remember, Superintendent Morrow, he was in and gave kind of an overview of when we started that, but the goal is to make sure that all of our parks look the same with the tables and benches. So I think another 3 years would get us really close to that.
And that's the tire grant.
Yes.
And there's no outstanding debt for this fund, and so with that, again, this is just one of those funds that we like to review with you, but if you have specific questions, we can either answer or bring information back.
Could you kind of quickly, I guess, just kind of reading through, looking at the capital improvement, what falls, even seeing in here the Flint Hills and Prairie Spirit Rail Trails, kind of what falls beneath special parks?
So I believe something like the tot lot, in the last year, we did the City Park Playground was part of that, the match for the surfacing underneath of that playground came from here. There's, I believe there's a tot lot replacement, and there's several other projects like that, gazebo, or shelter repairs, things like that would fall under this fund.
Yeah, so it's really large. The tot lot has been, we have the Parks Master Plan, and the tot lot has been recognized as something that needs to be replaced for some time now, but as you can imagine, an area that size is gonna be a very significant dollar. So it would be one of those that would be listed in this fund. We're hoping to find some type of grant match, or, somebody wanted to donate X amount of dollars to contribute towards the tot lot. That's what this fund is.
And you mentioned trails, that's
Yeah.
obviously another thing.
So
that
yeah,
would fall
trails
underneath
within
of
city
this fund.
limits falls beneath parks, the
Yes.
special parks specifically.
Yeah, so special parks, so if we had to redo a portion of the trail, a large dollar amount like that would come from this fund.
Okay.
Seeing that, that there's 65,000 sitting in there for Lakeside, I would really like to see something come to fruition pretty soon. 8 years ago, when we sold the initial 6 lots, that money was supposed to be set aside for the trail that you had mentioned from 15th to 17th. There was a discussion about a dock being put in there. There was a discussion about shelter house, butterfly garden, but a shelter house and a few things like that. Now, the pond was dug out a couple years ago, made deeper, and I know that was paid out of that fund, but nothing's been done since then. And there's a lot, this is a totally different park than what we have, and we call it a park inside of Ottawa. The folks that go there aren't gonna visit the skate park or Forest Park. I literally, there's a kid there at 6 o'clock the other morning fishing, and he was there all day. We had individuals just sitting around it just in their own chairs, to have a shelter house and to have, some of those, picnic tables, out there, that would be really great. And the fact that those lots, those 6 that sold 8 years ago and the 3 that sold recently were specifically for that, that park, I would like to see us come up with something fairly soon and start working on it.
Yeah, and we've been having very recent discussion of what needs to happen out there with those dollars, just because those are specifically earmarked for that. So what's gonna better serve the majority of folks who are gonna be using it? So that's been a lot of the discussion, probably need some type of a shelter house, or, the boat, or not the boat dock. The fishing dock was discussed, or the walking trail.
Yeah, the trail and the shelter house for sure. I think those would be utilized significantly. And especially now that we're getting a little bit more building going on, on that side of 17th Street. There are a lot of individuals that, that walk through that tall grass or that tall snow, when they're going to the middle school or the high school. So it'd be a great thing that could be utilized for the kids that pass through there. Thank you.
And kind of with that, DJ, can you touch on, I know as a city, there's a certain requirement for amount of park space per household, per the size of the city, something along those lines, right? Like, as we expand, parks have to happen more, right? Or something along those lines.
I don't have those numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, I do believe that those numbers are specifically recognized in our parks, master plan,
Okay.
but something, the National Parks and Recreation Association, they would have reference to that, I think, but I don't have those numbers just right off the top of my head.
Any other questions? think I'm good.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our last item, 11D.
Already?
Review of tap fee costs. Staff will present a tap fee cost recovery review and seek directions on updating fees and establishing a connection policy for infill lots, and we have Director Sneed.
We are so excited to see you.
Man, I tell you
We
what.
really are, actually.
No.
Good luck to you, sir.
Right? We're losing the crowd, for sure. Mayor, Commissioners, thank you for letting me speak today at 1:12 in the afternoon. Today's presentation summarizes, our evaluation of our water tap fee cost recovery and proposes, potential changes, particularly for, residential meters and infill lot connections. Look at this as more of a, for those folks that may be still listening, as a connection fee, a connection to our infrastructure. Through whether it's a meter on the infill lots or the physical tapping of our water line. We're seeking commission guidance today on essentially two different items, whether to update the current tap fee structure based on annual cost and how to handle connection fees, for infill development. No vote is requested today, so this should be a fairly short presentation. Just your feedback to shape formal policy recommendation. The current fee schedule, was compared to real world installation costs. So things such as meters, setters, all those things material wise that go into it. We found that most residential taps, particularly the 5/8 and the 3/4 inch, are significantly underpriced. Additionally, the lack of formal infill lot policy means some customers are paying for a portion of infrastructure while others are not. On average, the city spends over $1,300 in labor and equipment per tap installation. Material costs have spiked significantly since 2021, as you can see from the chart above. Factoring all costs, we're losing well over $1,000 per residential tap. This isn't sustainable, especially as infill development increases. The evaluation used a standard inflation factor to bring past pricing into today's terms. That was a 5-year look back. And as you can see from this, you know, something as simple as a 5/8 meter, which is a standard residential meter, has gone up $152, almost $153 in 3 years. Did you say you had tried to bring 2021 to 2024 dollars? Did I misunderstand you there? Was that actual cost in 2021? Yes, okay. Actual cost of 2021 versus actual cost in 24 for those services. And all those services listed above are materials required to do one tap. And at the bottom, this chart shows our current tap fees, what we are losing as a division, as a fund, and then the proposed cost that you see down there is break even.
And on that, when was the last time we evaluated these fees? Do you know?
I'm not, I would have to get back to you.
Probably
In our
not.
most recent utility rate conversations, I know that they were reviewed, but
Not fully
we did
discussed
not,
or
yeah.
raised or.
Yep. In 2024, the city installed 53 new residential water services. So that's the 53 up there. For each of those connections, we experienced an average financial loss of over $1,000, primarily due to labor, equipment, and materials not being fully recovered through the current tap fee schedule. 19 additional connections were made to infill lots. While those typically involve less infrastructure work and less personnel time, the city still incurred an average loss of roughly $300 per connection. So if you go back to that, you can see the 2024 total for a 5/8 meter is $296. So that's right at your $300 mark, and there is no labor
involved in that at all. So anytime there's an infill request, you know, we've got so many great developers in town that are building in these infill lots. That's a $300 loss to the city every single time we put a new meter in. The utility fund is absorbing significant losses from every underpriced residential tap installed. As infill development grows, this shortfall could scale quickly. To maintain financial sustainability, staff recommends revising the fee structure to more closely reflect true installation costs. There's currently no codified policy that outlines how infill lot connection costs should be handled. Legal will assist in drafting a policy upon your recommendation and a new resolution adopting an updated tap fee schedule. Once finalized, this will return to the commission for formal consideration and adoption. So with your feedback today, staff will move forward drafting a fee schedule and infill lot connection policy. We plan to bring a resolution forward later this summer for commission action. And with that, I stand for questions.
I'm sitting there thinking, I know we want to have more development, so I hate to put more added cost to the home. However, I'm seeing the greater good in that another $1,200, whatever, added to the price of a home is not that much compared to the price of the home in total. Now, we got more builders in here, so I would rather defer what they think on this.
Well, if I may, it's your little gray line too,
Yeah.
you know?
I know.
Yes, well, no, just a little bit maybe.
But I also know what we're selling water, but at the same time, we're not making that much of a profit on the water because we sell it for a reduced price. And then we get more property taxes because suddenly it's a new home, property tax, but if it's in the NRP district, it takes a while to get that money back. So I know a lot of different moving parts of it. They sent this bill. Yeah.
You can go back a couple, here. Thank you. What I'm confused about is you've mentioned infill a couple times. And typically on infill, there's already a meter there.
Typically, that meter is pulled and then a new meter, the new AMI style meter is put back in place.
So a lot of the cost is the new AMI meter, not necessarily a meter. Because, I mean, the cost increase on the 5/8 meter is the fact that it's a new more updated meter, whereas if the older meters were just cheaper because they're more analog, you know, or whatever. So that's some of the cost there.
So when a house was previously there was an old analog
Mhm.
meter in place. Once that house was demoed, that meter was removed. And currently the setter and everything like that is there. Those other costs are already in place. So the 2021 cost of that, it was a radio read meter as well in 2021. They started coming in about, I'd say 25, 24, somewhere around there. So the cost of the meter is, you're correct.
A lot of those things that we're pointing out there are already involved, in a infill property.
Yep.
I mean, the tracer wire, I mean, first of all, what we would provide, city would provide is already there. Most likely that if they're either utilizing the existing line, they're not adding a tracer wire to it, but if they're running a new one, they're running their own tracer wire. So the PEX is obviously provided by the contractor, the setter's already there, you know, all that stuff. So really the only increase on an infill to me is just the meter cost, the $150 difference on the meter cost. And yes, there is some labor involved, you know, on the city side. I mean, you got a guy that's got to come out and install that meter. So that, when we've talked about this before, on the infill side, I mean, there are costs that the city's incurring, but I would like to have the discussion more on the new construction side, because at that point, then there's nothing. You know, there is no pit, there is no meter, there's nothing. Now, so if we were to add all this up, we're still not at the 2342 that's proposed. And I'm assuming that a lot of that, actually, real quick math, about $1,200 is what we're considering labor. Because if you add up the 24 totals, that's $1,000 roughly.
$1,000, yes.
So the other would be labor. So now I'm trying to figure out where the labor in ours comes in because once again, because I've done it a couple times, the city provides the pit, the contractor installs the pit. The city does provide the setter. They come out and they install that and everything, once they run their water line. And that could be a myriad of different ways. I mean, it could be bored in, which we incur those costs, things like that. So, but a lot of times is you have that contractor that's exposing that pit, where that pit's gonna go. So I'm trying to figure out where that $1,200 in our cost and labor is coming up. Because you got a big pit, you throw you've got a big hole, sorry. You throw the meter pit in the hole, you connect it to the line that's just been ran, the city does. And, so there's no excavator out there digging, cause the pit, the hole's already there. Where are we incurring the $1,200?
Typically, when we get a work order to go fill put in a new residential service, we'll go out to the location. The stubbed line from inside the home is sticking out of the ground. What we will do is we will excavate either hydro or with a backhoe, the water main. It could be on either side of the road at that point. What we'll do is we'll go ahead and put one of those saddles on, the brass saddles with a cord, and we'll tap that main line and either run it across the road or run it up to the house. And that's where we will dig the hole for the pit itself, the plastic pit that's got the ring and lid that sits out in the front of your yard. And then we will take the water line that the contractor has stubbed up for us and attach it to our system. So everything from, and when we figured this up, our distribution superintendent figured 4 hours for labor, and then those same 4 hours for our equipment, whether it be the backhoe or the hydro excavator that we use. So did that answer your question, Annie?
Yeah, I guess maybe I just haven't been involved in it where we actually take the building's water line and connect it to the water line, to the meter pit. A lot of that's contractor required. Where, yes, the city, I always say we, and I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth here. The city is required, it does run the water line up to the pit, but generally it stops right there and it's connected from there by the contractor. So I guess I'm just trying to not charge the contractor twice, because quite frankly, if we're doing what you're saying we're doing, most contractors are gonna do that from now on. They're gonna stub out their pretty blue line for the water line and leave it and say it's your job now, if that's the case.
And this is, my information is based on my past history.
Okay.
I
just wanna get that black and white there, cause I mean, like I said, if contractors are listening, that's exactly what they're doing. They're dropping their shovels and saying it's your job now. And I maybe I'm wrong too, and I don't think I've seen that before. Normally it's we connect to the pit once it's installed. And I just wanna make sure we as a commission, when we go to have this discussion, that we know that's what we're requiring of us, city, and contractor too, so that there's no gray area there.
Right. I will definitely find that out for sure on the process, for sure, 100%.
I think, yeah, when you're talking kind of even term wise, as we say tap, people may almost think that is something new. There's never been a meter at this lot. You're truly tapping, your brass saddle with the 3/4 cap. So it's kind of almost like maybe vernacular wise on what are the different ways that we do it. If it's a lot that's never had a meter, what does that tap schedule potentially look like? If there's a pit and it's just from the meter on, what does that kind of look like? And maybe almost defining that a little bit more, and then also tying that to size.
Sure. Existing, non-existing, and size.
Yeah. Because like you said, if there is a line into a pit and it is just, now we're going to an AMI meter.
I don't want to go to tap fee.
Yeah, right. Or for a homeowner, you think someone has.
And currently we're.
Yeah.
Sure, and you're not, and we need to be, I mean, there's very few cities, if any, that other contractors are not paying tap fees. But yeah, we need to be, it's just, we need to be, I guess, fair on what we're charging, and getting fairly compensated for what we're doing too, so.
Also thinking, not in terms of new builds contract, homeowner, You know, now that we don't have service line warranties anymore, right? If you are a current customer, can you continue it until you don't pay? Or could you not? Do you remember on that? We can't sign up for the service line warranties anymore, right? But if you were existing, you can keep
That
it.
carries over.
Okay.
I believe so, yes.
But just as a thought, someone needs to replace their water line. For a homeowner, this would be a pretty substantial increase in the cost of having a plumber run a new line, pending what portion of this tap fee they would incur in that. You know, because it would likely be a new meter. If someone needs a new meter, we're running a new line, you know, they're running a new line. How would that look different than new construction?
Typically, the only time a setter or meter is replaced or removed is when it's cut off. Like it's either a brand new build. When a customer is replacing their water line, they go to the meter. It's the city's responsibility from the meter to the main.
Okay, so in that case, we're not like similar to the AMI meters for electric. If someone, you know, pulls a permit because they're putting in a new water service from the meter to their home, do we go ahead and put an AMI meter while it's being touched? Go ahead and try to do it? Okay.
Yeah, usually.
And is that something that in that either permit process, do they get that additional cost of the tap? Okay,
Usually, typically the tap fees themselves are for new builds.
just the new bill, yeah, okay.
Yep.
Cause I think for people, that could be a lot of confusion that they, you know, if your contractor's giving you $5,000 and all of a sudden we're throwing on 2,300 on top.
Right.
You know, that might be scary on some of those situations when it's more maintenance than new builds or infill lots or some of these things.
That's why we've kind of toyed with the verbiage, is it a connection fee versus a tap fee, you know, a connection fee can mean anything. Well, there could be a non-existing connection fee or an existing connection fee, which could be a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
For those homeowners. Because one thing we've got to look at and not be confused with is this, the galvanized portion of this lead service line study that we're doing.
Yeah, for EPA.
That, you know, homeowners are calling and asking us, you know, how are we going to replace this? And especially if they see this, they're gonna think, oh, I've got an additional $2,300 I'm gonna have to pay. No, because it's not going to incur that tap fee.
So for folks who aren't aware, on like, say, the Northeast Village that we talked about at the beginning of the meeting, you know, 40 townhomes coming in. Does the city set all of these things that you have listed in the description for each one of those water meters? Or is that the developer contractor in something of that, like a development that's not just a single family home infill lot? Where does that line get drawn cost wise between us putting this stuff in and the contractor / developer?
For myself, not being a contractor and going by past experience, the city installs those. Now, I will say, in a situation like Northeast Village, if there's homes that close together, they may put a bigger pit in and put two setters in one pit versus having the cost of having to dig it up and then they will tap with a bigger line and then
to there
split off to the two. But I can get that verified for you easily and get with you on that, because I'm a little, you know, taken back by Commissioner Crowley's thoughts of what's taking place there, because I was under the impression still
You
that.
want to talk to Justin?
Yeah. Okay.
And maybe I'm wrong, but.
And I do think as we're looking at, you know, getting an ordinance, something for this. There's so many different scenarios, and it's kind of like, is there a fee for meter sizes specific to each one of those categories? Similar to, I think, our utilities right now, you know, we see for water alone, you know, in electric, we have so many different categories of those.
Yeah, and on the electric side, even, you know, there's a $250 extension fee and $24 tax on top of that, which covers, and then there's, we provide a meter can and a mast.
It's another discussion we need to have too, because the city provides a meter can, they provide a weatherhead, they provide the flashing, they provide the hub, they provide a lot of things that any other city I've ever worked in never provides. We buy all of that from a supply house, and it's insignificant in comparison to a tap fee, but it's 3 $300, $350, maybe more, depending on, what it is. And if you take that times 50 houses, we're back up to, a significant amount of money. So, it's another discussion, commissioners, we need to have, because I'm along the lines of another thing that I don't think the city should be providing. Like I said, everywhere else I've ever worked, we go buy our own and we install it. There are standards that we would have, that they would have to work up to, and provide, but certainly, they would need to source their own.
Commissioner Farley, along that same line, we also pay for half the transformer for.
Yeah. Which is even more significant. I mean, $12,000 roughly, if not more, sometimes.
And lifetime warranty.
Yeah.
Because the city, if something were to happen to that transformer,
Yeah.
we'll be the one replacing it. So not the American one. Yeah. All great questions, and I will definitely find out that process and let you all know what that process is.
Hammer out later, I guess.
Yes, I plan on, yeah, that's nice.
It's good, like, smart man said, where are you?
It's nap time. Okay, any other questions for Director Sneeden?
So how would you recommend we staff move forward with this process?
I think you have a conversation with Justin for sure, kind of see what he thinks, and maybe a few different ideas of existing house, non-existing house, certainly, if we're boring, things like that, just kind of have a few different scenarios for sure, and then maybe throw a dollar amount each one of those. And then that way we can say, does that look fair? If not, what do we think is?
Okay.
It's my opinion.
And currently, right now, I'm hearing you say probably stay away from the connection or the infill part of it.
Well, I think there still could be a fee on that. I mean, if we're upgrading the meter can, I mean, it might be insignificant, but it may be $150 fee or
Okay.
$250 fee or something like that. I think there could be a fee for every bit of it. It's just a matter, it's kind of a staggered, that tiered thing of where that fee actually ends up being.
Okay.
And I can see some of it almost being, all, almost like an à la carte menu, that it's like, do you need the hydrojetting? Here's this line. Do you not, like, as you kind of need things, so someone could look, obviously, we never know until the day it goes in, exactly what's needed, but at least they'd have clarity to say, because of this, here's why we had to charge this, here's the total charge for that. Or something along those lines, if we're able to kind of do that on a schedule.
Sure.
Because I think something that'd be interesting to find out too is some of these infill lots where those cabins are, I don't know how old, but extremely old. We use a lot more water today, typically meter size, do you see, is there an increase in meter sizes? Or was 5/8 for most of the ones?
Yeah, 5/8 is our biggest meter user. We run around we average about 2-inch meters a year.
Oh, I mean, in smaller, like, instead of having the 3/4 line running in, that it's a 1/2 inch line running into a home. So as you tap the meter, you increase the size of.
Well, usually what I'll tell you is it's just the meter that's 5/8. It's a 3/4 tap.
Yeah, because your setter's gonna.
Yeah. Everything, all the setters on those smaller lines are 3/4.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
Green.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to comments by our city
Yeah,
manager.
we'll make it super, I'll end the pain. We got a couple of community, events coming up. Want to, highlight Friday, where we'll have our community concert. It's also forecast to be, I think, the hottest day of the year so far. So come out and, enjoy the heat, but do so with, quality tunes. And that'll be at, Legacy Square. We had our utility crews, tour the, Smith and Loveless facility for the, lift station at Pin Oak, where that's been constructed. Want to note that the project's been completed for our, pavement preservation from the 7th Street to Cherry Street. We still have, some mill and overlay outstanding and a small segment as well on the mill and overlay. We have one segment remaining, and we have the, chip seal in a couple of spots as well. I believe it's Mulberry, North Street, and
I think there's 9 different locations.
Yeah. So, you'll be seeing some of that information circulated very soon. This project continues to progress, and we are kind of getting ready to be in the waning areas of the project. However, you'll notice that we will be backfilling and, completing asphalt, or in the, excavated site that you see, here, and then further to the south as well with that second phase of the project. And then want to highlight here, and pay particular attention to the fact that this is an overview of our sales tax collection and the levies that we currently have. We have included the 1/10 of 1% or the 0.1% wastewater improvement levy that expired in September of last year. And that ended with a collection of $371,970 for the year, for that portion of the year. But however, we still have a general purpose half-cent that doesn't sunset, that generates about $2 million plus or minus a year. This is as of June with the May collections, and so to date, we've collected just under $879,000. Now we have 2 1/2 cent sales tax that will be expiring on July 30th, both of which we rely on for both infrastructure improvements. That first one is specific to Proximity Park, and the second half is a general purpose, which provides, $2 million a year into the general fund that helps offset that property tax payment that our Ottawa residents would have to pay. And the average property for Ottawa, if you're an Ottawa property owner, you're paying approximately 159 1/3 mils per year. And that includes 1.5 mils to the state. You're sending about 47.15 mils to the county. The city is 36.05, with 8.5 going to the library, for a total of 44.64. And then, of course, we have 66 mils for the city, or between 38 and 40% of the aggregate that goes to the county is also generated by the city in this kind of overlap of property that's levied. So we will be coming to you with some discussions here in the very near future regarding what we might need to do to look at extending these items, which provide a significant input into our general property tax, as well as infrastructure improvements that could be expanded citywide beyond simply targeting, in this case, Proximity Park. So
that 1.5 mils from the state, that's going away, I understand. And I think that will save, countywide, I think added up around $600,000 that'll stay in our county. So that's good news from the state.
So I just wanted to highlight this and kind of give you a heads up that we're going to be bringing some options forward to you here very soon. We have upcoming agenda items, including more discussion on our community partners. But wait, there's more special revenues coming your way as well. We'll have the auto policy update, as well as the inclusion of 2 words in our personnel handbook for the compensation policy. There was a email distribution to our employees this morning on the changes that are forthcoming with respect to these policy amendments. And we'll also have a tentative discussion on the Rural Housing Incentive District and our Consumer Confidence Report update, which will be by Director Sneathen, are required by KDHE of the state for our water utility, and that will also be increasing from what we've traditionally done once a year to now being required to do twice a year. And then we have an upcoming planning commission meeting on May 29th. And with that, I will conclude my report if there are no questions for myself or a member of our team. But before I do, I would like to add that in this month's Kansas Government Journal, if you turn in 3 or 4 pages, you'll notice that our essay contest winners are highlighted, including the overall winner from Ottawa, who we recently recognized here at our city commission meeting. And so we're really grateful and want to congratulate Agnes Lambert once again on her highlight of the airport. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will move on to comments by the governing body. We'll start with Commissioner Crowley, Commissioner Skidmore,
I was gonna show some cool movies today, but I guess I'll skip that to this. We'll go with that.
Mayor Pro Tem Clayton.
I'll just keep talking for a while too. I just want to say, obviously, like this meeting, we're nearing 3 hours. But it's full of a lot of great information. The community partners, what they truly do for the residents of the community, for Ottawa as a whole, is invaluable. We have some great new applicants as well. And so I think it's well worth our time to hear them out for the money that they're asking for and what it can potentially provide to the citizens. So other than that, I would say July 4th, we will have fireworks. So I don't know how that's right around the corner, but it is in less than 2 weeks. Or right after that.
I'll say your math isn't mathing.
No.
Because we're almost at 4 hours.
It's almost 2:00. Oh, gosh, okay.
So it is
Yeah.
Mike's nap
Yes.
time, so.
I lost track.
And I have
Made it all.
no comments. We'll move on to announcements. All of the following will be at City Hall. We have a June 25th City Commission meeting 4, July 2nd, City Commission meeting at 7, July 9th at 4, and July 16th at 10 a.m. And seeing no other business before us, I will adjourn.